Hello and welcome to Apex Legends Master Circuit Wildcards number 4. I'm Matt and I'm joined by my boy Blue for the first time actually being able to cast together, man. Good to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you here for the first time as well. Ready to be jumping into some awesome PlayStation Apex action here over the next few hours and for two different regions as well. We've got our Europe and our North American show today, so it should be a good time.
I love this because it's all like community driven, people getting involved, a lot of fun that we're going to be looking at. But let's go ahead and do some of the housekeeping, walk you guys through everything you need to know to kind of prep you for everything we're going to be walking through today. Start off with Wildcards Qualifier. We're going to be doing trios, up to 20 teams depending on how signups go, and we're going to be doing 5 games per region.
Absolutely the case as far as our scoring system is concerned. Not going to be too surprising for anybody who is familiar with Apex tournaments, just in case you're not, though. Obviously, for every kill your team picks up over the course of a game, you're going to be getting 1 point per kill, and then you can boost that with placement. The higher you place, the more points you get, topping it out with 12 points for first, going all the way down to 1 point if you finish as low as 15th, and obviously progressing increasingly from that point forward.
On top of that, of course, we got some prize for everybody that's going to be competing today. Walking away in first place, you're going to have $600 in your pocket. Second place is going to get $300. Third and fourth are going to get $150, but worry not, 5th through 10th. You're also going to get a chance to get a seat in the seasonal final, so that way you have more opportunities to rack up some cash and showcase your skills.
Absolutely the case. That's coming up in just a few weeks' time, of course. Make sure you're paying attention to that. But in the meanwhile, let's focus on today's qualified teams. I believe we had about 15 or so make it through the culling and into today's tournament. So we have Viper Squadron, We Don't Play, Baguette LF, Clippers, Hakeem's, GB, DN, FMA Titans, TXC, Red Fade, RVR, Deja Vu, Vertex MGA, Retrix Z, as well as TTV-Team as our squads for today's matchup. For the most part, these teams are going to be new to me. We definitely have some highlights that were able to stand out in the qualifiers, and we'll be paying closer attention to them once we actually hop into the game. But like we said before, very much a wait-and-see sort of thing to see what exactly these squads are going to be able to bring to the table once we get into our first map in just a few moments here.
Well, if you think you can bring something that we should be able to see and you've got some skills, remember you can go to compete.playstation.com, sign up to compete in any of the rounds. We still have some qualifiers that's going to be going on for a ton of different games. Let's say maybe Apex isn't your bag. Don't worry, there's a ton of other things that you can compete from. I think we even have some Rainbow Six that's on the docket. We got some fighting games such as Dragon Ball FighterZ, just so much different stuff. So make sure you go check it out. I know the fact that there's a lot of hype that's starting to be built up behind PlayStation, getting more involved and trying to do more community events. So now's the time. Jump in, get involved. You might find some other people that have a competitive mindset that's similar to yours, or you just might be able to walk away with some cash. Either way, all about having some fun. But Blue, I hear that we're getting ready for our first game already.
I believe we are. It's going to be a fun time, as well as we're going to be going on to Storm Point for today's matchups. Obviously, the newest in terms of competitive maps that have been kind of slowly accepted into the pool here. Teams are getting more and more used to it. This map is still very different from some of the other previous maps we've been seeing played out, obviously. Just on the verticality standpoint, the map's basically just a giant slope for the top 2/3 of it, so that creates some very awkward fighting positions for players. You have some very high-tier loot POIs sitting on the lower end of the map, but you got to be careful, obviously, of the third-party opportunities that will come with that from teams moving down from up above. Overall, though, good separation between it. It's going to be interesting to see how those POIs play out. Of course, this is going to be the first drop of a lobby that's probably not too familiar with each other. I wouldn't have expected there to have been like scrims or anything to establish dominance on any of these POIs, so it probably is going to get a little chaotic, I would imagine, for this first game or two as teams try to fight for control over the higher loot areas.
Well, that's always kind of the fun about this style of event, right? Sometimes, let's be honest, whenever you're looking at Battle Royale, the opening games can be kind of formulaic because everybody knows where the other team's going to be dropping at, and everybody is kind of playing passive so that way they can kind of have the best opportunity to get points in the first game. This is a lot more raw. We're going to be seeing people that, while they are going to be familiar, some of these teams have been playing through a lot of these qualifiers, so should have an idea on where they're dropping. It's not for certain, and especially whenever we look at a map such as what we're going to be going into, there's a lot of different, I guess, variations on what we can be looking at just due to the pathing options, because that's one of the big things that we don't really get a chance to talk about regarding this map is how many independent choke points it also does create. Whenever we look at the verticality of what you're talking about beforehand and then add in a whole bunch of choke points, it leads to a lot closer range fights that are kind of surprise fights, for lack of a better term. You're walking along just trying to rotate and suddenly you find yourself in a skirmish that turns into a 5-way team skirmish. So that's going to be what a lot of these teams are trying to avoid. So do not be surprised if scouting and information gathering has a very high take in this first game.
Lots of variety in terms of where a final circle could end up on this map, too. Like we were talking about before, lots of variety just in terms of the POIs and what they provide. That extends to the kind of map layout as well. Down to the southwest, we have those very open areas where there's not going to be a lot of cover to play from because it's mainly the shallows down by the beach. You got a couple rock outcroppings and whatnot to try and hide behind, but that's really it unless you end up being lucky inside of one of the unnames or, of course, the actual POIs themselves. Meanwhile, up on the more northeastern side where it gets more mountainous, you have the opposite. You got plenty of rock walls to crawl around, good angles to play from, plenty of buildings and trees to cover behind. So depending on where that final circle ends up going, you're potentially going to be asked to perform to a very different degree, and for some teams might not even be able to make it that much further if they end up unlucky getting caught out in the open in such as one of the shallows area down to the southwest by the beaches, of course, if they end up down there.
Oh man, there's just a lot of complexity on this map, which is one of the reasons I love it so much. It's a very diverse set of biomes all smacked together, very close range, which means the fact that you could just essentially round a corner and everything feels like changes on the map. But we're going to start getting underway in just 1 second. So before we go into it, remember the fact that we are going to be looking at the competitive side of this. So a lot of the meta is pretty established. I wouldn't be expecting too many large variations, at least in the first couple of games, as far as legend selection. Stick to your tried and true, your guns, you know what works at that stage. But as we progress, usually that's where we start to see some of those X factors that are lower on the leaderboard start to go, hey, why don't we try this? And that's where things start to get even crazier. So if the first game feels a little slow, don't worry. It's going to get more and more Apex Legendy as it goes.
Absolutely the case, and we'll hopefully get a little bit more aggression out of our squads once they feel a bit more comfortable with things too. Also important to note too, we've got 5 games today instead of the usual 6 you might find in other competitive Apex tournaments, so just a slightly lower opportunity for these teams to try and rack up the points. Going to be all that more important though to make sure that these teams are able to pull that off earlier on in the tournament. Here we go, folks, heading into Storm Point for all 5 of our drops today, the first of which is coming up in just a few minutes. Let's see who tops out our leaderboard to start off the day, and of course if they'll be able to keep themselves there throughout our subsequent games coming up after this.
Looking through, seeing how the legend selection is going, not a lot of surprises. Information gathering being key for a lot of these teams very, very quickly, making sure to get that in some fashion. Going to be followed up with rotation options, and then just some type of damage dealer looks to be the case. I mean, whenever we look at it, it just seems like a lot of the legends are placed in just different orders with some Pathfinder kind of sprinkled in for fun.
Definitely the case. It's going to be paying attention to Baguette as we saw they brought a Crypto into the fold. And that's going to be very interesting to see how they're able to use that. Obviously, Crypto, in my opinion, still very, very useful, especially considering the capability for him to just look really quickly at the boards from the drone and see how many squads you have in range. But still, we generally see him used pretty rarely just because it's a pretty heavy multitasking sort of legend you have to try to deploy towards, especially in a console environment too, where you're playing with a controller. Going to be pretty difficult to probably micromanage that. So it's pretty rare we see him. So definitely going to be wanting to pay attention to that team. Other than that, though, like you said, pretty much what we expect. We can see here on We Don't Play as well. They're going to sneak in a Bangalore onto one of their players, so that'll be fun to see when they get into these big fights. The smoke can obviously help out quite a bit inside of that engagement, and we have seen Bangalores actually have a pretty moderate degree of success in kind of the mid-tier of competitive Apex as well, so not going to be too far from home having them on this squad.
I mean, specifically, whenever we look at the differences between playing on PC and to playing on PlayStation, it allows some of the legends that don't normally get the love on the competitive PC side to have some favorability just due to the benefits of such as aim assist, the rotation capabilities of certain teams and certain players. So that means the fact that whenever we look at it, somebody like Bangalore is actually quite capable in here causing a lot of problems. Just smokes down and the capabilities to move through them as efficiently, coupling that with some ways to look through the smokes, can have a massive reward. Can see, though, looking at the map, most of our teams have decided, hey, it's edge life to start with. We're going to leave the center up and available. Near on nobody is going to be inside of this first circle to start with. That means the fact that we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on those choke points on the edge where a lot of these teams are going to be pathing next to each other. Most notably, I'm looking through here, maybe down around where Raymond is at, and that Antenna Jurassic Park area could be a big problem.
Definitely going to be the case. Either way, though, definitely made it a little bit easier for our teams to get a free scavenge at the start of this game, as we ended up with obviously a little bit less than a full lobby, so that opened up a couple of extra POIs. You can see our purple squad down at the bottom right side of the screen, really taking full liberty of that, spreading out to 3 different POIs, including an unnamed one for Ahmed Hakim over on the right side of the map there. So definitely going to be pretty well and secured for that team, but they will have to link up a little bit later on. Thankfully, not going to have too much of an issue of doing so. They do have that kind of middle choke point to sneak into this first circle from at least, so they should be able to make it in scot-free and establish some positioning later on in the game. They may run into some issues trying to get themselves into a safer late-game position, but for the time being, I don't imagine they're going to have any problems. Might even be able to sneak off a few third parties if they go unnoticed in that quadrant of the map, too. We'll have to kind of wait and see how things evolve when these teams get pushed closer to each other, which is going to take some time to get to here, folks. Once again, due to the 12-team lobby that we're currently working with at the moment here, not going to see any action just as of yet until we close out probably the second, if not the third circle.
Here's my fun. Here's one of the things I love that are about these kind of community-style events where it's open for signups. We've got the Hakeems here, right? And we've got Ahmed Hakeem, but that is just one Hakeem. Are all of these guys named Hakeem? See, like, I'm always curious about some of these naming ideas behind, like, I guess, community teams.
Hakeem even had one of his teammates like kind of like were half rhymes with him too. It's like Mateen, I think, if I was pronouncing it correctly as well. So they got the combo going. It's gonna roll off the tongue nicely if we get a good moment from those two.
We got some fun over here with Viper Squadron, one of our teams that we have seen have some big successes with Twiggy and Dominus coming out from this one. Really, it's just a matter of what we're looking at right now to try to eye how the rotations are coming into play. Nothing really too much is going to be happening. So it's really just about kind of checking in with some of our known commodities that we've seen have successes throughout all of the events so far. Actually, that's one of the things I do like about this is even after you've managed to qualify, you can come back in, continue to compete, continue to try to play, and can just kind of grow your skills, because there is something to be said if you've never played in one of these events, and that is just the fact that how quick your skills will level up playing against other very good players. It's something that I recommend everybody to try. If you're wanting to try to bring your skills up to the next level, you might not win the very first event that you go to, but you will get better, and hopefully by the time you get done with it, you should be walking away with some cash because of the success you managed to find.
So looking at the Titans just clearing out the armory here. Like we said before, not going to be running into too much conflict. They do obviously spot some enemies on the right there, just off of the ability that the Valkyrie has floating through the air, but not going to be too keen on taking that fight this early on. They'll essentially be kind of ringing the dinner bell, so to speak, for any squads in the area this early on in the game, so do not want to be the first squad to be jumping into the fray, potentially giving themselves up to what would very realistically become a third-party situation if they aren't able to watch their flanks that easily, so going to be holding off on that until someone else decides to ring it. It seems like we may very well have that here. Toucan, as you can see in the distance, some shots being exchanged between him and potentially TXC, who has actually just a two-squad here right now between Sarah as well as Raymond.
But Hakeems are also jumping into a very similar pathing onto this. Looks like they may be opting into a third party, so TXC has got to be careful. Looks like Sarah is already trying to get into a position to defend up, but it's kind of a precarious point way up in this high ground and is now starting to take a lot of shield damage. So going to retreat away from it, but that means it's going to surrender some information. It looks like the Hakeems do hear this, but do not aggress too much further from where they're going to be at. Instead, it's just going to be a standoff from hilltop into this top.
Sarah trying to play things here from the top of the launch pad. Long range shot on the 30-30. Going to be tough to mark, unfortunately, due to the drop-off on that weapon at this type of range. So we'll see a few shots connect, but nothing tremendous. Nothing to justify a jump in from Sarah's teammate Raymond, especially considering that they are more than likely 2v3 in this situation. Just trying to get the chip damage, trying to get a few upgrades onto the shields if possible, more than anything at this early point in the game here. So things are just progressing quite passively as a result of that. The other squad has already seemed to have moved away from the area. So TXC is going to be safe for the foreseeable future as they continue to fight for positioning.
Maybe. We do also have FMA. I think it's Full Metal Alchemist Titans, because I think it's a combination of two anime things. But after the anime conversations we were having before this all started, I'm just going to assume it. But with FMA Titans getting in close, they still have got to be careful and now have two teams that have moved into a gatekeeping position in front of that duo. That's going to make this more difficult, without a doubt.
See Red Fate here continuing to move into the circle as well. For the most part, it seems like most of our squads have been able to move without too much of a conflict. As you were mentioning, that kind of southeast quadrant over there is probably going to become an issue as we begin to get towards the final seconds of this circle. Good possibility these teams could end up swinging by each other. We got a lot of verticality to play around here, so there's a possibility for teams to be able to sneak past each other on that. Red Fate obviously running out of room here. They are going to have to use the grab cannons to get themselves into safer pastures, but at the end of the day, looks like they're still going to make it without too much of an issue, and no pinch coming out against them as of yet here. So that first circle goes by. Like you said, we have a couple of squads pretty close to each other, and finally it looks like we're potentially jumping onto each other as well. Mateen over there, as we can see, getting engaged with our light green squad down towards the south, but they bail away from that and are able to escape the fight, but they may potentially have some other trouble coming in from the north end as well.
I do want to point out the fact that we have had a new circle pop, and it is a hard Western shift, with really Dominus and his crew being the only ones that are inside the circle right now. So that collapse of teams around Antenna and on the eastern part of this, now we're going to create a death funnel where we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams potentially all on a similar pathing and in gatekeeping points along this. So while it has been a quiet start, this circle is going to kick off some action because these teams cannot avoid each other, and something's going to have to break soon.
Definitely the case. Aside from that, though, most teams are holding on to their safe zones they've been able to take from. So RVR has this cave on the eastern quadrant of the map, for instance. Like you said, though, they're potentially going to get pushed in, but the good news is they've already moved pretty far west, holding this kind of central position on the map, so it isn't going to stress them too much when the circle finally closes, as they're already within close proximity. Positioning is going to become their biggest issue more than anything, and I believe that they realize that, so they're going to begin to try and take up said positioning a bit earlier on. As you can see, though, any enemies that they would potentially deal with are well away, about 500 meters or so, half a kilometer out, so RVR has pretty much full control over the map at this point around them. They don't have to worry about anything else in the near future. We do have a down going on, though, somewhere else across the map. Toucan being able to knock out Amogonticus, if I said that correctly. Apologies if I did not.
I think it's some variation of the Among Us joke.
Yeah, I'll take him down.
We also did see one of the teams bump into, I believe it was Viper Squadron, and get eliminated. So this is just going to be kind of the domino effect as things are going to be falling. I do want to point out FMA Titans did move in very close to where we just saw Dominus and Twiggy get a squad wipe. That duo proving the fact that, hey, just having two is just enough sometimes. As Clippers now making an aggressive play into this, looking around, realizing the fact that they do have some aggressors that are going to be pretty close to them, but so trying to finish this fight as quick as possible. This is going to be up in the far northwestern section of the map, which has got a lot of very interesting POIs talking about it. So instead of just trying to fight their way through, discretion, the better part of valor, and it's time to just go.
There was a third party bearing down on this location, so potentially Clippers might have some more heat to deal with in a second. Looks like that squad might be peeling out, though, after noticing the Valcult going away. So Taylor and the rest of that squad over there, like I said, was going to be trying to potentially close it on this, but realizing the verticality they have to fight against, as well as the other squad ditching, more than likely has called them away. So once again, we'll be stuck at 11 squads, just that single elimination from before. Red Fate, as you can see here, still suffering from the loss of our Among Us friends. So we'll have to see how they can potentially get that player back. They did get the banner, so there's a possibility if they get the mobile respawn beacon, or just be unlucky and able to find one themselves, they can potentially bring that player back into the fold. But for the time being, we'll have to wait and see how they potentially work towards it. And they do have quite a bit of heat on them still, as you can see here. Just a little bit of damage sneaking off onto Magnum, so they're not in greener pastures just as of yet. A little bit more distance between themselves and their opponents here to be able to justify going for that res.
Man, this is going to be hard. They've got a team back behind them, running as fast as they can. And we do see that Dominus has already moved into a more aggressive position, and a three-way fight could be happening down in the southwestern section of the circle. But let's not forget, Tila is also inside of this game and has had some phenomenal stats through our qualifiers beforehand, and has presently got 3, maybe even 4 teams around, depending on how they choose to path. So the north getting very, very clustered. It seems like most of those teams that were playing into the east that we thought might lead into a death funnel in the eastern section have instead gone for a northern wrap, and that's created a different problem because everybody had the exact same idea. Hey, let's just rotate around the north. That'll be the easier pathing for it, but now it is crammed full of teams and players.
Though Clippers skirting on the northern edge of this one, they're going to be able to take up some decent control for themselves. You did just see, I believe, another Valkyrie deploy coming up there with T1 squads shooting pretty high, so someone else having to escape potential combat between themselves and their opponents. See here, Clippers believes they've got an opponent nearby, and they're correct to assume so. We've got at least one squad sitting in front of them. Jazla wants the engagement, wants the jump, and is going to be able to find the opportunity for it, but unfortunately on the losing end of the fight ends up backing away. No full commitment coming in for this just yet. We'll see the map pop back up so you guys can check in once more with how these teams are doing. We've got one squad, Raymond, as well as Sarah. We've been checking in with them earlier on in the game. Way down in the south at the moment, all the way in circle. They don't really have a clean path to get themselves into it either. Yes, you can see that there's a little bit of an open area on the very south end of the circle, but it is very open and could lead to them getting picked off. So that's probably why they're going to be sticking around over towards Barometer, continuing to loot up in the meanwhile while they wait for the next one to begin closing in so they can hopefully sneak while things are a little bit more chaotic.
I would be worried right now for the Clippers because the team that they've managed to line up against, Tila and the rest of the team can really do a lot of work in there. As the next circle has managed to reveal itself and has now moved again to the west, but at least with a northern lean this time. But that means the fact that it's going to be pretty open. We've got maybe some cliff sides that are going to be a factor to deal with. Teams that have already moved early are going to be in some of the strong points that are going to be looking through this. But really, as we've started to look through the choke points from here on out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see 3 independent fights that are all about to break out as different teams are going to start getting vision on top of each other. Baguette getting the vision to start off with, talked about the fact that it could be some problems for the teams around him, and they are starting to unload. No fear. They realize the fact that they can walk away from this circle and just continue their hunt.
Bullock's not going to waste any time either, continuing to move in. That's another crack going out, taking down the opposing squad's horizon. They'll continue to push the envelope here. No reason to really hold it back. There's been very little resistance coming in from their opponents. Even needing that full arc star grenade on response is not going to lead to a whole lot of iteration for Obelix here. They want this wipe, and they want it now. Keep in mind, folks, we got a 12-team lobby at the moment here, so KPs are going to be a little bit hard to reach for some of these squads, especially considering they've got them out like that. There we go. Zestiro going to be one of the last ones to go down for this squad, potentially still one more up, and we can see that now. Cheka sitting out way in the distance, going to be trying to get away from this one, see what they can potentially rat. No, actually re-engaging onto Obelix, sees a moment of opportunity. Obelix will have to immediately fall back, but again, in a 3v1, that player still won't stand much of a chance. They will have to bail out here sooner rather than later, and I believe they have finally forced them back now as Cheka has a little bit more of a standard position here amongst the rocks now.
I mean, Baguette is just so freaking good. Whenever we watch them, they are just the dominant force in so many of these fights. If you move near them, there's a high likelihood that you're just about to become a KP for their overall leaderboard. So looking into it, the entirety of the North is now theirs, with the exception of Che, really. Other than that, everybody else is just kind of in the southern lean. So this has been cleared out very, very quickly. The South, though, starting to pop off. Remember our teams that we were looking at beforehand with Twiggy and Dominus. Viper Squadron, its own independent strength squad, now in the thick of a lot of what's going to be going on in the far west as 3 different teams are all converging onto this point, throwing out what they can. You can see it's all about territory control and trying to step away, but the problem with it is there is an entirely new team that is converging on the vector that they're trying to retreat from. Are they aware of how this is going to be moving through? Is it's going to be Raymond just to the east of this angle, and the more and more that they're pushed into the north, guess what? That means that they're going to be walking right into the waiting arms of Baguette.
You can see it's FMA sitting in the green there on our map side, trying to close in, but at the same time, they're dealing with pressure from the Hakim coming in on the backside. So have to be wary of that. Another team going to go sky high here and launch out. That's going to be Twiggy, one of the last players left alive for his squad. They'll be able to relocate, though, as they're stuck in a 2v3 scenario, so they do not want to be forced into this engagement. Viper Squadron, as you can see, still able to sneak off quite a few kills. We've got 4 assists sitting on the Valkyrie, so a good amount of KP spread, even though these guys are only playing with 2 at the moment. Going to be seeing how far they can push the envelope now in terms of their placement to buffer already what's been a decent game with 5 KPs, assumably coming from them. The Valk's count is anything to go off of. Switching our POV back over to Baguette, who is well in the midst of starting another fight for themselves here, already pushing into another team's hot zone. It looks like they've got it down to a 2v3 as well, so should be able to mitigate this one, but we'll see now as they've got them crunched back out, pushed into a corner. There's the crack going on to 1, just waiting on their teammate to commit to the pinch and finish things off, it would appear, but no, one of their teammates going to end up falling. Baguette not fully assured inside of this fight anymore, but finally they get the down and trade things back out. Going to go for the second one. It seems like that opponent has escaped, though, and they're going to go for the res in their third, instead just taking the single KP as Raymond tries to move in for revenge, but Beret already on top of this one, countering it back out. Can't win the fight outright on his own, though, but thankfully a teammate coming in to assist to make sure the down still happens.
Again, Baguette just going to start further inflicting casualties on everybody that's going to be around them at the time, trying to reset as quick as possible. Raymond feels like he might have at least an opportunity to grab some more before he retreats, but that one was risky. Raymond now using the door for some type of defense, but that's not going to last long. Goes for the spray into it, quick exchange. Raymond taking a ton of damage, steps away from it, trying to keep the lineup, but he's going to go down, and TXC is out, and now Baguette has control of the north. Fight going to continue going on into the south. As you can see, that Clippers, their last member, still alive, but have 2 teams ahead of them, one of them being Viper Squadron.
Yeah, Cheka's been holding on quite nicely here, as you can see, Riot Zone, and at least the rest of one other squad sitting directly in front of Cheka, so having to be very careful about this positioning on the horizon as well, at least having that little bit of a boost potentially to help get them out of this dodgy situation. If they are going to be forced to move away from this one, we're going to see another squad dropping off the map, so nearly able to make it into the top 5 here for the Clippers. Nice sneak coming in from Cheka. Yeah, I don't know how they haven't seen him. It's going to be a complete other squad that ends up noticing Cheka finally. Knocks out the shield. Probably not going to see Cheka make it much further than this, although they're certainly going to attempt to do so. Won't realistically be able to get out of this dip, though. So Clippers will finally go down with Cheka. Still, though, pretty impressive being able to make it up to the top 6, having to scavenge the solo kind of rat play for that long into the match.
Here we go. It's all about moving into this last circle. We said there was no cover, and you're about to realize how bad it's about to get. People now having to compete up against the ring. Viper Squadron got a full squad on the other side of them, so have got to be careful. Do manage to get the bat off. Now just trying to dodge through, but they haven't been able to get too much firefight off on their own. But at the end, they manage to spin it back around, get some damage into this one, and Viper Squadron, while they are limping into the circle, at least trying to take down another squad with them. GB is eliminated, but Viper Squadron goes down from range in the end.
And Viper Squadron was sitting with the kill leader there for a split second as well. 6 frags on one of their members. And mind you, this was a 2 squad that started this game off. Still able to put some gargantuan efforts in to make the KP's node. And I believe top 4 placement. Very nicely done there. That's going to translate obviously onto our leaderboard once we get a peek at that after the game. Baguette preparing themselves for what could very well be the final fight of this game now. Going to hand out all the mats, all the batteries and cells distributed amongst their teammates as they are sitting in pole position right now. Just need to not mess things up on the final closure, as they seem to have good positioning to play from as well. We've got Mr. Namka sitting over, I believe, as a solo, trying to survive this situation, and then 2 other squads still in position a bit further away from this one. Either way, like we said before, Baguette in the front seat, in the driver's seat of this scenario, just needs to make sure they're able to close out on it. Things will get a little bit dodgy for them given how far away they are from the new circle, but assuming they were able to contend with the Hakim sitting up on top of the cliffside, should be able to make it past and look for that top placement.
Yeah, what we're looking at is the Hakim's having high ground advantage, looking down into a wide open field that at least we could see Baguette having to cross from. We could see trying to at least get some harassment so that way they can open up this angle to make the approach. That smidgen of damage might be enough. Baguette just trying to exploit any opportunity that they can create, and now starting to get closer and closer. Now that they're getting up into this river point, this is going to make it to where they have a better angle into the open sides of what's going to be going on with the Hakims. Hakims who are now looking into the north and the firefight that's going to be happening over there, but that's going to allow Baguette to creep in right back behind this, and now what was going to be the risky position for them to cross, they're now in cover in the circle and capable of backstabbing any firefight that's going to happen between these 2 squads.
Great plays from the Baguettes here to get themselves out into the open and now into a potential power position. Hakim's, of course, still looking to close in on our tertiary squad sitting down below in the village, but they've got to be careful of that potential swing coming at them from Baguette here. They're aware of it, but they may not potentially be able to stop it still as they've reached a very close positioning. Finally, Hakim able to land out one of those bow check shots that have been evading him, but while all that was going on, while the distraction had been played in, now we can see that 3rd squad from down below in the village. They'll sneak forward. Hakim nicely done to get himself out of this potentially very dodgy situation with the Arc Star coming back in, but still so many nades landing on top of this squad. The strike coming in as well. The Q from the Valkyrie over from Baguette's side. Hakim's are not going to be able to maintain despite having seemingly the best position out of all 3 of these squads. They are the first of those 3 to fall down here, leaving up to Baguette and our other remaining squad now.
Yeah, Baguette managed to move into the circle with the ring managing to close. The other 2 are just having to play against the edge, fighting the circle as well as Baguette, and Baguette takes it with authority, just managing to unload a ton of damage. Taylor has got to be careful, though. Managed to drop down to about half-life, but with this rock in between him, and Control still going over to Baguette, trying to find the angles into it. Taylor's just going to walk up, get the high ground, look in, and a beautiful spray to just absolutely decimate the opposing squad. There is no way to even look up into this with the amount of confusion that is happening inside. You can see the Baguette does manage to lose Ablex, but it is just off the push on one side. Taylor now taking a ton of damage as well, has to step away, but in the end, it's no surprise. It's going to go over to Baguette.
Certainly not going to be a surprising result given the game that we watched, of course, but definitely the expected one at the end of the day. The Baguettes crushing it, mainly just due to their superior positioning going into that final circle there. They make the right moves at the right time and as well seem to have just that teammate coordination that allows them to outslay compared to the rest of their opponents and shut things down here in game number 1. Beautiful performance coming in from Abelix, Fritz as well as Taylor there to claim our first of 5 games here in Europe for today.
Just the way that they managed to realize whenever Hakim's got distracted in that northern fight, cross through the open territory, take over the strong position in the circle. No circle moves into the position. They're now the team that's getting to be able to gatekeep everybody out because Hakim's got a little too tunnel visioned in on that one. But hey, this is a team that we haven't seen too much of, so that's one of those live and learn moments. Don't give up the good position so that way you can manage to win the ending firefight. But guys, we're not even going to a break. Don't worry. we still have another game that we're going to be moving into before we have to just take a break in any form and fashion. So, Blue, that's a way to start. I mean, Baguette kicking everything off in a good way is just a phenomenal performance.
We've got some contenders now, right? We're establishing the storylines here. Obviously, the Baguette's kind of taking the crown for this one, quite literally in more ways than one. I believe they're going to be taking most kills more than likely at the end of that. We have to see, though, as we had quite a few contenders for that one. Viper Squad definitely being another one. Despite the fact that they were down at only 2 players from the start of the game, they were still able to wipe out. It looks like at least 2 full squads in the time that they had. Ended up going down, I think, right around 5th. So in terms of placement, they're not going to be getting the most points, but combined with the 5 or 6 kills they got, should still leave them in a pretty respectable positioning on the leaderboard, considering the fact that they're playing this tournament out 2v3 at the moment. I believe their third is potentially going to be joining them for game 2 or 3 or something like that. They potentially they had to like go out and run an errand or something like that, so we're waiting to see what's going on with that, but maybe we'll get them back to full strength and we'll have a bit more heat coming from that team later on as well.
I mean, the clinical nature and how Baguette manages to realize moments to exploit is just absolutely amazing. There's a lot to be said for understanding map knowledge and how to navigate a circle, and just being able to win your firefights, that's one thing as well. But giving yourself the advantages to realize how to exploit what's going on around you and really use the other team's decision-making process is what provided so much strength to them. I do have to say, though, what you're talking about with Viper Squadron and the way that they fought tooth and nail, dude, that is just... that's respect.
I think it was closer to like 8 kills, actually, now that I got to see them on the replay again there, and I got another little peep at their kill feed, at least looking at the seer there. Nicely played out by them. Very curious to see where they actually end up on the leaderboard. Definitely expecting the Baguettes to be up towards the top, and more than likely Hakeem to be competitive with them as well. The only thing I'm not certain of with Hakeem right now is how many kills they were able to scavenge over the course of this game. We didn't really see them get into any fights specifically from our POV up until the very end there, and even then, they weren't necessarily able to claim a whole lot of KP, so while they're definitely going to be sitting good on the placement side of things, should have gotten second, or rather, no, third, excuse me, at the end of the day there. We're going to have to wait to see where the placements left them. We'll be seeing that in just a second. Here's the, obviously, stats from our top squad. Just under 1,500 for both Obelix as well as Taylor, and right around 2 to 3 kills for each player. Very nicely played out here in our first matchup.
Hey, Taylor, usually being a massive performer inside, there's going to have Obelix that's right there next to him in overall damage. But hey, that's okay, Crypto. We know the fact that while you didn't get the damage numbers in the same amount, you're going to be walking away with the kills due to all the information you managed to provide inside the situation. I wouldn't be surprised if that Crypto had some vital information on a lot of these really good moves that we've seen Baguette manage to exploit. I'm just curious now, is this the beginning of the steamroll, or are we going to start to see other people managing to step up against them? The Taylor aggression on top of that rock, you can see that We Don't Play really didn't have a chance to look back into that one, but point-wise, still pretty close. Overall, you can see that Viper Squadron, the team that walked away with 9 kills like you were talking about a second ago, Blue, but other than that, it's pretty close still.
I sit down Viper Squadrons again. I know we've we're kind of sound like a broken record at this point, mentioning it so much, but it's just so impressive. 2v3 at the start of this game. Didn't even drop with a third squad member. Ends up with the most kills in the lobby. It's still a pretty respectable number of placement points as well, coming in like 4th or 5th place here. So very nicely done. They're going to hold 3rd overall with 14. Only 1 point behind our 2nd place finisher as well, and We Don't Play. As obviously they got 9 placement points, 6 elims over the course of it. Baguette actually kind of keeping up with a lot of our top contenders here, so not necessarily outshining our squads in terms of elimination capability, but that positioning certainly allowed them to stay at the top of the crop here for our placements and allow them to stay in front by a pretty good factor to 4 points ahead of the 2nd place team at this point.
I mean, this just goes into play to your strengths and play to your win conditions, right? Viper Squadron realized the fact that having 2 up and making it into the late game and winning the game was going to be far more difficult. So instead, let's just jump on any single fight that we can find, pick up the KP because we have faith in our gun skills, use that to counter out the amount of placement points that we're going to get. Baguette on the other side of that, usually a team that's very active in hunt for kills, but just due to the pathing that they had being in the far north and the way that circles came into it, actually getting the massive amount of placement points inside of it. And that's one of the things I love about this game is watching how you can make on-the-fly adjustments to different situations to still manage to make sure that you can end up in a good spot on the leaderboard as long as you're aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are going to be.
And actually, a further update on Viper Squad, we thought they were a team that was potentially going to have a 3rd joining them later today. As far as we're aware, that's not happening. So, going to be even more fun to kind of keep up with that team and see how they potentially progress throughout this tournament, if they're going to be stuck with a full 2 throughout the rest of today. But we'll follow that up, of course, as we get into the rest of our games. I think it's time to start talking about the fact that we've got Game 2 coming up here in just a second. Is the Baguettes going to be able to repeat their run? And will Hakeem's be able to make improvements on the positioning game? These are all very important questions now as we get ready for that 2nd drop, I think.
I'm curious on if anybody has somebody that's helping them by watching like any of the feeds, because we are running a delay. So yes, just because the map shows and everything else like that, the teams can't make instant adjustments. But if they have like an analyst or a friend that's at least pointing out stuff, remember, we didn't have anybody really drop center inside the last game. Yes, I know that the POIs on the edges of the map do tend to be better, but that being said, having an easier pathing off the get-go has a lot of strength. So at least loot up fast from the edge, move into center, and then use that as a rotation point. If somebody can do that, they're going to find themselves in a much easier pathing to get into the late game.
Going to make for that easier pathing, but it potentially also makes you a bit of an early target too, especially if you try to go a little bit more.
Nobody else is going center.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, when no one else is going there, yeah, but you got to be careful, of course, is why I think when the late circle closes in, if you are the first to take up positioning in that circle as well, just because obviously if you're sitting there defending a POI or just defending like a building or something like that, having to shoot out quite a bit, everybody's going to be hearing you first as they rotate into that, and you're potentially going to be the first target when it comes time to crunch, or at least you're going to be the most aware target compared to some of the other squads that are around you.
Yeah, that's always the nature of the beast whenever we look at Apex, right? It's a game of chicken. The first team to make the aggressive move usually finds themselves being pounced on in a moment of weakness, because it's always going to come down to the third party, especially the later that we move into the circles. The third party advantages and benefits of just kind of being sneaky and choosing the moment that you can choose to get involved in the fight is just massive. So yeah, as we progress into the later stages of this, we'll have to see if anybody can keep control, but we do have a couple of teams that I don't think that'll be afraid about trying to keep control of those points either, though, is the way Viper Squadron. And whenever we're looking at this, I mean, really so many of the teams that we saw in the later game stages of this look like they're scrapping for a fight in the late, and ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. It really looks like we have like 4 to 5 like true contenders right now. Viper Squadron does have a little bit of a hard cap because of the fact they're rolling with 2, so like they're not really going to be able to probably contend like in a head-to-head fight against Baguette just due to the numbers disadvantage. But we'll have to wait and see, as they've already proven themselves quite confident being able to sneak off not just a few squad kills, but literally the most squad kills out of anyone in this lobby, even considering that disadvantage. So very curious to see what else they can potentially adventure towards and how aggressive they are willing to get, how kind of much they're willing to push the envelope with their inherent handicap that they're playing with to try and stay ahead here, to try to stay in their top 3 position currently. As that's an impressive feat, and something that we're certainly going to be looking for this squad to continue to show us here. Is that'll be quite the achievement to go home with if they're going to be able to maintain that at the end of all 5 games.
I do also want to give a shout out to We Don't Play. We didn't get a chance to really follow them to the same degree, but they did manage to make it into the later stages of that game. Remember, we did see that was Tila up on top that was spraying into them on that rock, and that was the advantage that they managed, that we saw Baguette manage to get by taking control of that area and moving into the rock. But We Don't Play was having to fight on 2 opposite sides of it, while also having somebody that was on top just having the capability of spraying into the smoke. That's a hard situation, and a lot of times, yes, you do want to look up and go after the person that's on the rock, but with the way the smokes were lined up, they didn't have as good of vision, so they really couldn't do that as well. Instead, just had to deal with the threats in front of them, and that's just a terrain difficult situation right there. I mean, that's a combination of a lot of different factors. So don't count out We Don't Play, because at the end of the day, they are actually going to play, and they're actually going to put up some decent numbers.
All right, well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, into our second drop out of 5 for today here. Let's see if the Baguettes can repeat their success, using the crypto to find the intel ahead of time and win mainly off of superior positioning and being able to outwit the Hakim squad, who had the high ground at the beginning of that final fight. Now, as we move into our character selection, we'll see if there's going to be any major departures from what we had in map number 1. Like we said, obviously the Baguettes being the big surprise there with the crypto play that ended up working out quite well for them towards the end of game 1.
Oblex rolling over the potential of a Gibby, depending on how that's going to go. We have seen him roll different variations of classes and different legends as we move through this one, so a lot of opportunity and variation going to be coming into it. It also looks like we might have a Gibby on another team as well, so bringing in some more strength and defense. I feel like maybe that very open circle might have encouraged somebody to go, hey, let's see if we can make our own cover for some stage.
Yeah, I think everybody realizing as well they're going to have a lot more freedom to play inside of the first circle or 2 here, just because of the fact that we don't have the full 20 squads in at this point, so it's potentially changing the play style, potentially changing the composition for quite a few of these squads too. It's just a little bit of a lower pressure game overall. You have a lot more map control right from the beginning. You don't have to worry about squads potentially trying to sneak in on you. We don't have that 20 squad squeeze that tends to happen in those full lobbies as well, where everybody is trying to avoid the fight for that first circle or 2, and it just creates a very claustrophobic situation when we hit circle 3. Not going to be as much of a problem in this type of a lobby, so teams are a little bit more confident. That's meaning we're getting some more aggressive legend picks, I think.
That means it's going to get more fun as we move through the day. Checkpoint looks like it's going to be the loot-loved position, but nobody going over there. We do see Andre and the rest of his team making a move to Cascade Falls, which is going to give them some center rotation. But Edge still seems to be the name of the game, as we are getting a northeastern variation of Circle this time.
Starting to land themselves out. Not looking like, again, we got any contestation. Would be a little bit BM considering the status of the map here, but would certainly make it fun for us here to be able to see an early fight. Squad's not really contesting on that, though. Not wanting to test their luck in that regard, so it is going to be just a loot spree on the feed here to start off with. Once again, take a look. We do have a few squads relatively close to each other. Raymond squad, for instance, there over towards the Hakims. They could potentially run into each other as they begin to close. They have a couple rotation paths closing in on each other. The real story is going to be over here by Barometer at this point, as we did have two squads landing in that same POI, so we got a high likelihood of those two to potentially collide as they rotate out. We'll have to see if there's going to be mutual respect on those squads, though, as of course they're going to want to make sure they both can make it out of here into that first circle, and jumping onto each other will be a potential negative to both of them at the end of the day.
I mean, even at the end, if they don't time their rotations properly, they could bump into each other in rotation. So whenever we look at the top of it, we don't play already doing a lot of quick looting. You can see running purple as well as blue and shields. Looks like they're starting to get their guns in order, so that way they're prepared. And that means the fact that they could be rotating first, in which case that could put them along the pathing to bump into Volmoskava and the rest of his team that's just going to be to the east of this. But also, even then, we have another team in Antenna, so any firefight that's going to be happening around here has the capabilities to be a very quick, I guess, third-party jump-in. So, again, we don't play going to look like they might be the aggressors into this, as I think that they're starting to eye the idea of venturing out. Oh, yeah, there you go. Take the gravity gun around.
Yeah, looking like they're going to be skirting around it at the end of the day. Do have a flyer to take down here too. Loot wasn't the best, as you can see. Their Seer Romux is still going to be working on trying to get himself a blue shield at minimum. And obviously GB, now with eyes on them, they're very well aware of the fact that they've fallen away, more than likely without realistic capability to fight them, though, as they probably just don't have the guns and the scopes for this one. They can take a few pot shots, but they're not going to be expecting to actually make any serious impact here. So just keeping an overwatch on them to make sure they don't try to get aggressive onto themselves, of course. I say that, but we actually do see the Horizon Volt moving pretty aggressively towards that. So they're going to let them go towards the cannon first, but it does look like they might be trying to chase this fight down this early on in the game.
I like this. Don't take the early shots. Don't give them the chance to charge up any more shields. If you're going to move in back behind them, try to take the opportunity fight in it. Now, I do want to point out that We Don't Play did move to the south. So actually away from the circle to try to avoid what's going to be going on around Barometer. So that's good for now, but you can see whenever we're looking up into this, they have their eyes set on trying to get themselves a vehicle, and they're just going to come in with style. Problem with it is they're going to have a target that's going to be very, very close, going to be rolling by this one, not taking any damage off of that one. I thought that some type of firefight was about to happen. Oh, there it comes.
There it is. Just took us a few minutes, apparently, for We Don't Play to get found, but they are going to get noticed here. So pretty much ditching the car the second they get themselves across the circle once again. Keep in mind, they have not made it to the actual round one closing point, so they still have quite a bit of distance to cover, but their opponents are going to be jumping onto him. GB finally finding the fight that they had been looking for ever since they got to this POI on landing here. Are going to be able to throw themselves into it. We see the ultimate coming out from the Seer as well. They're going to try to move away from this position as a result of that. We Don't Play, pretty sure, wants to avoid this engagement if they have a choice in the matter, but unfortunately being thrusted into it. Yeah, now leaping down below, they'll be very much keen on taking it here, especially now that they got the initiation from above. Riot Zone down, a second player also knocked out. Seems like they're going to be trying to make quick work of this one, as already two are down. The last player standing, Volt, trying to go for a run on this one, but Rompxo, as well as the rest of the squad here for We Don't Play, for the most part, making quick work of that. That player not fully down just yet, but going to be soon, as there we go. The full elimination is in for GB, and it's going to be We Don't Play that takes them all down.
I know, like, We Don't Play, they have some firefighting capabilities. They got a lot of damage out early, and once they realized that, it was just about exploiting it. And they never gave them a chance to really get their shields back into a decent situation. And remember, GB even started off in white shields by comparison. On the opposite side of this, you can see it's going to be FMA Titans that have gotten themselves involved into a fight. Looks like the ring is going to continue to do some tickle damage to everybody, but looks like Anubis should be able to get rezzed, and they should be able to continue on their path to the northeast, and I don't see anybody along their way all the way to Cascade Falls, so they should be fine.
Going to be in a much better position as a result of that. The FMA Titans, though, still a little bit cautious of their situation, just throwing down the smokes. Surprised we don't see the shield barrier here to try and soften the blow a little bit, but thankfully it's only the T1 circle, so don't have to worry too much about the damage. As long as they've got a stack or two of syringes, they should be able to make it into the closure point without too much of an issue. Just a bit of a long distance to run here for the Titans, so hopefully they brought 2 stacks instead of 1 there of those syringes to be able to make sure they go the full distance. No Valk either, unfortunately, for this squad, so they don't have the easy redeploy to potentially come in for them. As we switch back over, we're going to take a look at the Hakims here, who are, for the most part, just establishing Overwatch on this valley. Not too keen on taking a fight. Got a pretty serene part of the map, so they are just having a few moments to themselves. So they wait to see where their first potential target might try to swing in from.
Yeah, the nearest teams are going to be TTV. That's going to be to the northeast, but it's already bypassed them around. We might see We Don't Play come in, depending on how they navigate those choke points that are going to be to the north of them. If they lean into the east, Akeem should have vision on that. With their positioning and where they're trying to hold down, it does seem like they might be trying to go for some early aggression in this. But I think it's just going to come down to what they spot. Now that they're leaning to the east, that should allow We Don't Play to path into this one. And it's just a waiting game to show where the next circle is going to be going.
Things are going to be nice and quiet as a result of that. So for the time being, We Don't Play will take the advantage overall in this game with the 3 kills that they've gotten. An assumption, of course, that they make it pretty safely into like a top 3 or top 4 finish. We'll have to wait and see, of course, as they are a little bit further back compared to quite a few of the rest of our squads. But at the same time, they don't really have anyone in the immediate path. There's a couple teams that might be able to sneak some shots off on them as they cross into the circle itself. And of course, as they move into our new circle that's just been established for round 2, it's going to cut off right in the middle of Command Center if they decide to go that direction. Definitely the possibility that a few squads would have beat them to the punch there, and they could be forced into a fight in that POI. But otherwise, they've got a pretty clean path to continue moving forwards up into our further circles. We're going to begin to see our teams begin movement, of course, into that new ring. We can see We Don't Play just now starting to close in on the round 1 circle, but of course have made it there without too much of a problem. Plenty of mats left over for them, so they're going to be able to heal themselves up real quick and begin to move further past this. We'll have to watch out, though, for a few squads like FMA, as well as potentially the Hakims, depending on the direction they're going. Looks like they're veering off east from We Don't Play's position, so more than likely going to be able to avoid them until we get to a later point in the game.
Looking through, we've got the wall as well as High Point and Command Center inside this one. Prowler's just coming in, given We Don't Play some, I wouldn't even say a problem, really just kind of looking back into it. You talked about the verticality of this map, and that's what we're going to be seeing coming into a massive effect. Teams that manage to get up in the very far north, such as Jazla and the rest of the team, are really just looking down the hill at everybody else. And you can see as you just continue to creep into this northern area, while you're going to, yes, have a couple of things like the capsule buildings over there and whatnot that can provide a couple of different variations for it, you're going to have to be very, very careful just due to the fact of there's going to be so many odd pathings in a very vertical location to begin with. In addition to like Command Center, the cave pathing that's going to be coming through here, this is going to be a lot trickier of an in-game circle than we saw last time, because last one was open. This one is going to be clustered with opportunities.
See another one of our squads way off to the west side here as well, but catching up with Baguette, who we actually haven't been able to watch a whole lot this game. Our Game 1 champions, for anybody who might have just joined us in the past few minutes, and was able to take it in quite the convincing fashion too. Came in about 2nd or 3rd place, 4 kills, but definitely first in the placements there as they outwitted an opponent just on positioning alone due to the fact that they've been bringing Crypto into the fold. Probably helped them out quite a bit on that regard, just gathering the intel, finding the correct timing to try and push forward, on top of course, having the nice EMP for the engagement in what was a relatively open final circle zone. So very well played for them to be able to work it, but like I said, they've been pretty quiet this game, haven't really been forced into a fight. Most teams have been respecting each other on this drop, and as we start to close in on our 2nd and 3rd circle, things are starting to drift towards a much closer point. As we can see here over on the west side of the map, Dominus currently ratting as well here, trying his best, I should say, to avoid what I believe is going to be Red Fade working his way around. And indeed, it's going to be Dominus here, as he's already lost his other teammate, Twiggy. So once more, that's going to be the ultimate problem for Viper Squadron rolling with a 2 squad here, is if they lose one of them early on, it's very tough to pull anything else off. So for the most part, Dominus just waiting until we get to the end game here to try and wait anything else. Otherwise, he is a rat for the foreseeable future from this position.
But see, they win my heart every single time, Blue. These guys that are competing with
such a good
just
story.
2 players, and just being like, hey, we can still find a way to get points. And hey, remember how we were talking about how complex this area is going to be? There you go, TXC, high ground looking in. Because what's better than high ground in the map? High ground on the high ground, because we're just going to, like, I guess, Obi-Wan square this to where you get all of the benefits.
I was going to say high ground with like a 4 to 8x personally. But
what do you mean? High ground with a spear, not the way to go?
No. That's. I mean, unless you're really accurate with it, that's might be a little tough to work that. I'm feeling for. I'm feeling for Sarah now. I think Sarah's only got like a 2 or 3x on that G7. Oh no, she's got a 2-4x at least. But
I do want to point out that we do have teams that are coming in to the east of this position. We also do have 2 teams that are going to be bumping into each other down to the south, while we see the pot shots that are going to be coming in at range. So there is a chance for a 4-team conversion along this pathing, as most of these teams should start to hear what's going on around them. And man, again, you said it. Verticality. There it is in full force.
To the most extreme extent possible, it looks like here, because we drifted so far north on this map. Nice engagement coming in from Vertex, though. Going to be able to crack out the shields of an opponent's squad sitting in front. That might have actually been Dominus as well, the last player alive from squad up top. But no, it looks like it is going to be from a different one as they try to move forward here. It is a full squad just catching a Valkyrie. Extended a little bit too far out from their position, but still good engagement here for the team to move forward on, as Vertex is going to go for the commitment on this fight now.
Here's the problem, though. They've got Baguette that's heard this and look like they might be trying to move in back behind this firefight. If they don't manage to fin this fast, Vertex has got to be careful. They could find themselves absolutely sandwiched. Then Sarah and squad do hear this up to the north of it as well, so all eyes now turning into this. This fight has got to end fast. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible for both teams, as Baguette does hear this, but isn't overextending just yet.
Look at the map. This is going to turn into a huge squeeze if this ends up extending beyond the circle closure as well. Nobody wants to fully commit to the inside of this one. It's turning so rough for all these squads just to try and decide what the good timing is going to be on this. You can see Vertex as well, a little bit worse for wear at the moment, have taken some heavy damage. They've backed away from the scenario. They're going to try to drift over north, but as you can see, Sarah and a few other opponents are still in the area, going to be causing problems if they try to move towards that. Once again, Baguette sitting on the top end of this one, just up the road as well, ready to leap if anyone tries to cross the street in the middle of this engagement.
Not leaning into the ravine, so that means the fact that they might be taking pathing to the south means that we have 3 teams that are all going to be forced into this northern rotation. With the way that the circle is lined up, you've got to make a play. Vertex going to go airborne and just try to jump over everything. They've got to be careful, though, because it looks like Akeem had a similar idea and is going to be jumping along a pathing just in front of them. So the high ground that they were trying to vie for might already have a team that has managed to leapfrog right in front of them. Instead, they opt their way down into the south and instead going to land at the caves, where fortunately enough, Baguette opted away from rotating, and now Baguette is going to be following in right back behind after both teams have left.
Great little positional steal from Vertex here. This should be a perfect spot for them to be able to try and last out the remaining closures on. It's very well played from them. As you said, though, Baguette having to give up their potentially superior position that they had a few moments ago to be able to facilitate their own push, which is now not worked out. It's turned against them to some extent as well. They're trying to move forward. As you can see, they've got a squad sitting in front of them, but it's on top of this rooftop. Not a good engagement position for Baguette to try and play from here. They're going to get scanned out as well by their opponent's Sears. That'll interrupt heals that are attempting to come, and they've got to pull back onto that one. Baguette going to try to get the EMP off to hold back the tide, send them back just a little bit further here, but the nades are rolling, and it's nearly knocked out the crypto shields here. Perry having to run away from this one. Finally might have security to get the full battery off, but Baguette's going to have an issue in a moment here, as we do have the circle closing on them now. Thankfully, with the Valk, they will have the redeploy option, but where exactly are they going to go? We just watched another squad struggle to find positioning. Will there be any left here as this team tries to land now?
Seen 2 teams jump from this exact same position beforehand. It looks like we might see Baguette leading more into the Hakeem's side of it. Still trying to cross through. They're starting to get vision from everybody, and yes, it does look like they're eyeing the Hakeem's approach. And no, looks like Jazilla, they're just kind of jumping around. Nobody is really harassing them enough to pull them off of anything, and they're going to find a capsule building that is completely open.
Nicely played by Baguette. Had to wait a while for it. Was getting nerve-wracking for a moment, but thankfully they're able to find an opening, a building that they can claim for themselves. They do find some neighbors at the same time, though. TXC, I believe, this is, nope, never mind, going to be another squad here. It actually is going to be We Don't Play from the looks of things, just to the south of them in a very similar shaped building, but they're not going to waste any time. Both squads jumping up on top of each other. That's not the only fight we have. The Hakeems are trying to wrap onto another squad towards the center of this one as well, and we have even more playing out on the other side of the map, too. The FMA Titans, as we're on board with them, they've recently lost their third down to 2 between Broken as well as Anubis, so they're on passive duty while they try to recover and get themselves more so in fighting shape for whatever is thrust upon them next.
We've seen everybody start to make the plays into the capsule buildings now, so FMA needs to make a move. They're going to have, I believe it's We Don't Play to the south of them. Neither team capable of moving until at least eliminating the other, so it's just become a standoff that's made everybody else have the opportunity to get really vie for those different capsule buildings. And hey, what's up, Dominus? You still alive? I see you.
Nicely done for Dominus, make it now into the top 10. To be fair, that's not a huge achievement necessarily at this point, seeing as we started with just those 12 squads again, so very low amount of eliminations overall, but for the Titans, they may very well become our next squad to be eliminated, down to only one now. We don't play fresh after their kill of, yes, they did indeed knock out the Baguettes in that previous fight, by the way, so being able to take them down as far as I saw. Now proceeding forward, trying to take down another squad, and they succeed in doing so. The FMA Titans looks like falls to their hand as well. We don't play, going on the revenge tour now to steal away first place, or at least attempt to at the end of this game.
The teams just got crushed between 3 different teams and now have just one up that are hiding into the north, with I believe that's going to be Ahmad Akeem that's going to be holding down over there. We still do see the Baguette holding down their capsule building. They did deter enough people, but they also have a lot of eyes that are kind of drawn to their attention. You mentioned this beforehand. Sure, it's great to get into the center of the circle, but if you do it with enough flair, you're going to get a lot of attention. And right now that attention is going to be TXC moving down this hillside. And I think that actually all of our teams are going to find a way to path into this circle, so still going to have 7 up. That's nuts.
Raymond, with the unfortunate chain of events, wanted to take a little bit more of an aggressive positioning, a bit closer to this pill building sitting down over here. Unfortunately, someone else had a Kraber on the other side of that one and paid the price for it very quickly. Looked like they were struggling to get that third player back up to begin with. And we finally see where this Kraber is as well. It's Jazzle over here for the Clippers, continuing to maintain this strong positioning, really just raining hellfire down on anybody that tries to descend the cliffside at the moment.
Should be able to get some damage. At least now it looks maybe just trying to force people out. This is how my games go. You know, I think that I'm trying to get into a good position and suddenly there's just Krabers everywhere and I can't move anymore. So I relate to everybody, but I mean, gosh, Clippers have control over this. The only real, I guess, benefit for everybody is the fact that they don't have the cleanest sight lines due to all the other terrain lines up. The circle is going to pop, and guess what? Still continues to favor them, so now everybody has to walk into that Kraber sight line. That's going to be harsh.
It's going to get a little tough now that we get to the closer ranges as well here, just trying to mitigate all of that movement showing up here. Unless he's got his sense turned up like crazy on this type of scope, it's going to be very difficult to land the shot. Still is going to be able to get the job done, though. Nicely done from Jazzla. Second one potentially sitting around the corner. Had the scan for it, but a box sitting in the way will prevent that shot from landing so securely here. The Clippers, though, are a patient breed, it seems. They're going to sit back nice and tight and just wait, either for a fight to be thrusted upon them or for a bit more of an obvious one that they can win to be thrown out. Vertex MGA is going to be our next squad to fall as they are caught out in the open. We don't play, it looks like, actually struggling now to reattain positioning after they got aggressive earlier on. Losing a player going down outright, or actually no, excuse me, misread our UI there, just in a down state, but in the middle of being res. They are still going to be a full 3, but obviously struggling to still maintain their position in the game, as you can tell, with a player going down just a few seconds prior.
They have to move into a sight line that we can see Baguette as well as Clipper is going to have vision on, and potentially Dominus as well, because Dominus is trying to make his move into this, so that's going to be real hard for We Don't Play. We do see that I think that Sarah and the rest of the team is playing to the north of this, so really it's just going to be our outlying factors. We do have Baguette that's going to have to move, but they don't have to move until after everybody else. They're real close to the circle, so they're just going to wait this one out and see how they're going to third-party jump into whatever is going on.
Actually, I'll correct myself then. I thought Baguette had actually gotten eliminated. They're staying in this one. They were able to avoid the fight, apparently, against We Don't Play, and are now in a better position as a result of that. Clippers forced into a corner. 2 of them are going to get sear scanned as they try to move away from this one. Jazzla is able to avoid it, so still has that aggressive tendency to swing out with a Kraber. A little bit timid, though, just because things are getting a bit close for comfort now. Closing in on some of the final moments of our 5th circle. We only have 1 more to go here, and then it shuts itself up nice and tight, and the final fight will be thrust out. This is actually a pretty busy circle now, all things considered here. We've really crushed it together. We had a very small amount of squads that let quite a few survive until this very late point where it's all now going to explode over the next minute or 2.
No, Clippers! Why did you do that to poor Dominus? He just wanted to make it to the circle. All right, 4 squads up, and now it's all about the firefight. You talked about the fact that it is congested. Now it's about to make all of that pop off. We're going to be moving to where everybody's going to have to be fighting against the ring and against each other. High ground advantages are going to be key for a lot of these teams, but also the building complex is providing some type of safety for now. Looking into it, it does look like, I believe, Clippers have the best track to the center of the circle. Maybe. This is a very weird circle, all considered. You can see that it's pretty much open, and really, a lot of teams have some type of pathing options.
So here, it looks like We Don't Play might end up with the best kind of rotation coming out from this circle here, too. You've got a lot of those smaller pillboxes, this fence that they can potentially rely on to mitigate damage as they're forced out. A lot of other teams don't really have that. You can see the rock surface for our squad on the left over here, just the single building for the one sitting in front, and our final squad in the way in the back over there as well. Really not with anything to play with. They're working on a verticality disadvantage as well, so they'll have to try and basically wrap their way into this fight. You can see that We Don't Play, because of the position they've taken up, they are the priority target for most of the squads surrounding them. They're having to be very, very careful waiting this one out. There's going to be the Q. We actually do get a Valkyrie deploy coming in as well here. They're going to go to the sky and try and see if they can get some better positioning. May have been a little bit premature on this is my only criticism of trying to do this right now, as no one else is really engaged in a fight. This isn't going to be all that chaotic, and as you can see, they're paying the price for it. One of them already going down. I'd imagine the rest of them having taken some decent damage as well. 3 players already down in this engagement, but all from separate squads. Not a full wipe does come in just yet as Clippers continue to maintain this building up until the bitter end when they're going to be forced out with its closure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much control the Clippers have in what's going to be going on. They can still also use this building for even more high ground advantage if they want to. Look at their shields, the position that they're holding from. Everything's going good for them right now, except for maybe the fact that they don't have the most ammo. Volt's starting to get pretty low, and we know Kravers don't rock a lot to begin with. So as everybody is now being forced into each other, it's just going to be about how Clippers choose to navigate what's going to be happening next. Ring coming in, and now it's all about trying to make sure that you can fight for every single inch that you're going to try to be able to hold. You can see on the outside of it, we got some movement coming in as We Don't Play, trying to make sure that they finish out what's going to be moving on around just to the north of them, as finally Clippers are going to have to make their move out of the compound. TXC down to just one player trying to cling to life, but he has a beautiful line into what's going to be going on. Baguette is finally going to be eliminating TXC, just trying to make sure that they get into the center of the circle, but they're going to go down. Now it is all lined up. Clippers on one side of it, getting some type of control inside of this, but actually starting to take a lot of damage, and it looks like We Don't Play is going to take control.
We Don't Play having to fight for every single inch inside of this game, but it doesn't matter. No one is able to best them despite the disadvantageous positioning that they were working with for a large majority of this final circle. Beautifully done. Should easily end up with the fights that we were watching with the most kills as well out of that matchup, so an absolutely massive score gain coming in for them on map number 2 here.
I just felt so bad for Baguette. They had so many teams that converged onto their compound just due to how the building line. So they were like, well, maybe we can at least get some distance from them by going up for a second. But everybody was like, no, we see what's going on here. I respect the idea and trying to get some more safety out of it. And also I respect you, Dominus. You managed to make it to, I think it was like 5th before going down, maybe 6th, but still getting some placement points out of that one. But the big question is, We Don't Play now getting 2nd in the first game and 1st in this one. I feel like we could see a change up on the leaderboard.
Yep, I would imagine so. That should leave them in a pretty dominant position here, especially considering the fact that Baguettes were forced into a corner for most of that game, too. I mean, you were just mentioning it. They were forced to reposition like 2 to 3 different times, could never really find a fight they would win. Smartly backed away from it at every single opportunity and was able to reset, it appeared, more times than not until the end, of course, when they were finally forced into a situation. But we'll take a look at the replays here, starting it off from the very beginning, where We Don't Play was able to wipe out a squad that had landed close to them. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty rare occasion inside of this game, just because of the fact that we only have the 12 to 11 squads that we're starting each lobby off with right now, but they found an opportunity and they took it. So right from the very beginning, they were already working with 3 KPs and they never really took their foot off the gas pedal from that point forward, it seemed.
Yeah, this is just, I guess, the momentum factor we talk about sometimes. All line up. We had a lot of very close swings and firefights that were going on over here to the east, but you can see as damage was coming out, teams did a great job on repositioning, but TXC had so much vision inside of this and were just a component to cause everybody so much trouble. I mean, just laying out bullets and just giving everybody a haircut from that high ground.
Yeah, TXC as well as MJ and Clippers, of course, as well here. Probably sneaking off quite a bit of damage. I would have liked to see where their KPs ended up for this game specifically, just because of the fact that, again, we saw them get quite active towards the middle. Clippers with a bit of an unfortunate end to things at the end of the day as they were forced out into this fight. Finally had so much momentum built up for them, hiding on the inside of that building and assumably sneaking off quite a few KPs. As we can see now for Jazzle, only 1 actual on the registry there. Meanwhile, as we're back over to We Don't Play, we can see at least 10 for Mr. Canova over here on the horizon. So way more active at actually locking those KPs down and making sure they get them on the scoreboard. Here is the stats where, again, yeah, we talk about it for Mr. Carnova. There he is, nearly 2,000 damage in this game with Mr. Namka as well as Romixo Plays, both sitting at around 900 at the end of that game.
16 kills at the end of this one on top of getting first. That is going to give them a lead and some comfort away from Baguette. While Baguette was active, I don't think it compares to this. And that is an efficient, I would say, 16 kills whenever we look at it. I mean, really only Carnova having around that 1800 mark. Everybody else really just making sure to make their accuracy the key component inside of figuring out where they need to put the bullets.
This should really open up a divide between them and the other teams as well. Even Baguette in second place is going to have to really do some work, I would imagine, to catch up with them. I'm going to be guessing around like a 5 to 10 point lead for them now, and we can see these points coming up onto the board. Of course, for our first two games, Baguette taking control of game number 1. We don't play, claiming the second one. Who will take our remainder? Well, we'll have to wait and see. We've got quite a few contenders, of course, as we saw inside of that game. Quite a few more teams able to pick up kills in that one as well. So it's We Don't Play up on top. Man, I was way off. Apparently, it's way more of a lead here than even I thought. They're up by just under, actually a little more than that exactly, 15, 16 points in front of Baguette now between first and second there, as We Don't Play absolutely decimates the rest of the competition here in game 2.
Their kill difference is the massive right there. What, 16 kills, 16-point lead, being in second, moving into first this time around. Baguette is still on the chase, but now pressure has mounted for them, and Viper Squadron, as well as the Hakims, they've got to start linking something together. Even Clippers, who found themselves in a good position, now tied up with the Hakims, as TXC still just a couple of points behind that. You got to start having your big games, because We Don't Play just kicked this game open, and it is all on the hunt now.
Yeah, and it really just seems like aggression is going to be the way to try and carve forward from this point if you're wanting to get back toward the top of that leaderboard, and you want to get back there quickly as well. Mind you, we don't have the usual 6 games, only 5, so just 3 more opportunities for these teams to claim back their points and try to steal that first place position from We Don't Play. That's really going to be the storyline, I think, from this point forward. Can anyone catch up to We Don't Play, as they just really set themselves apart from the rest of the crowd with that game right there?
Well, do you think that you're as good as We Don't Play? Well, if you do, then make sure that you go over to compete.playstation.com, so that way you can join in all of the action. And even, again, if Apex isn't your game, ton of other things to jump in and tackle. Rainbow Six, fighting games, Street Fighter is going to be involved in so much stuff. Make sure you go and check it out, see if maybe you can find something that you want to compete in. And if you want to compete in Apex, we would love to have you, because every single time we want to make sure that we're showcasing the best of the best. And if you think that you're that, opportunity is there for you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for that's going to do it for the time being, folks. So stick with us here. We're going to take a short break and give our players a chance to chill out in between the matches. When we do come back, we'll be back with map number 3 here for our tournament today.
And see, that wasn't too bad. We're already going to be getting back into the action for Apex Legends Master Circuit Wildcards number 4. Match in Blue still going to be here with you, taking you through all the rundown. And these first 2 games have already been spicy, Blue.
Yeah, definitely the case here. It's been fun to see, obviously, with a little bit of a different style coming into this one, both with the little bit more of an empty lobby and, of course, some of our teams as well being an interesting showing, but I think it's made for quite the good show. We definitely got our 2 front runners at the moment. We Don't Play absolutely crushing it, though, with their performance in game number 2, not only placing first, obviously, for our placement points, but also absolutely destroying the competition, just in eliminations as well, picking up 16 kills over the course of just that last game. As you can see here, leaving them with a very comfortable 16-point lead over the second-place team in Baguette, down at 27 points compared to their 43.
I mean, we talk about points per game as the key to victory on a regular basis. This is a phenomenal start because now everybody needs to push their PPG up to be so much higher than what is their comfort zone just to try to catch up to a massive game like that. It's no longer just, okay, be consistent. Now it's about time to have a star performance if you're wanting to catch up. We Don't Play. Thing is, Baguette can do that. Viper Squadron can do that. We've seen the signs of life from many of these teams in the middle of the pack that they have that opportunity. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to, in these 3 games, can you do it?
I doubt we're going to see this type of a playstyle shift happen sort of immediately in game 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it over the next 2 to 3 games here. Teams starting to get more aggressive, potentially trying to kind of ego drop right off of the bat here against their opponents and other POIs across this map to try and get those early KPs, to try and buffer those points a little bit, as it can be a struggle to look for them. You're either getting them right at the beginning, as we saw for We Don't Play, picking up that first squad wipe within the first like 2 to 3 minutes of the game, or of course we potentially really only see those being picked up towards the end when the teams finally collide with each other. It's just a symptom of the way the lobby's playing out right now, making it for a very interesting time, but also pretty difficult for the squad leaders on each team to select when, and more importantly, where to actually try and take a fight versus opponents. Here we go, then, with our 3rd drop of the day, once again going to be on Storm Point.
Moving into it, we've seen a lot of edge play, but not an aggressive edge play. It feels like a lot of just circle chasing that's going to be going on right now. If we see a conversion into a more aggressive, I guess, kind of like gatekeeping position whenever we look at this, there is the capabilities to pick up more KP, but the risk that comes with that is the fact that if you get aggressive on somebody trying to gatekeep them out, you don't know if there's going to be a second team that could be coming on a similar pathing. Looking in, I'm seeing if we're seeing any real modifications. We saw some gibbies come in earlier. Looks like we're starting to see Pathfinder getting some appearances in this one. Still pretty much tried and true basics. Nothing standing out to me just too much. Do you see anything there?
No, nothing departing from what we generally had in the previous matchups anyway. Like you said, those Pathfinders popping out every once in a while, but they're on teams that we unfortunately haven't been able to see make too deep into their run just as of yet, so we'll check in with them when they are able to find a little bit of a better footing in these matchups. To start out with our drop, though, we'll be following along, of course, with our Game 2 champions and the current overall point leader, We Don't Play. Mr. Nobka, Romexo plays, as well as Mr. Carnova, who absolutely shut it down in the last game. Just under 2,000 damage, 16 kills for him alone, if you count both of his actual downs as well as assists. So going to be seeing how we can potentially repeat that, as we got quite a few of our squads already dropping off. We Don't Play going for a little bit of a deeper dive this time, potentially going to go for the high loot zone over here towards launch pad.
So now the question comes into play. Are we going to see We Don't Play be more passive to try to hold on to their lead, or are they going to continue their momentum run? One of the problems we often see is whenever somebody has a big game like this, and they go, oh, look, we're like 16 points ahead. We just got to make it into the late game again, and they start playing too passive, which means they surrender control, and that leads to an earlier death. We Don't Play, though, are some old hands at this. I don't think that they'll fall into the trap. Instead, try to keep their kills up, and that applies pressure. As everybody starts to see, oh man, We Don't Play is picking up some more kills. That means the fact that we've got to do even more. It means the fact that people start playing even riskier.
We end up with a bit of a danger close landing for the second game in a row as well over towards Barometer. We had our teams kind of potentially flirting with that in the last squad, and we're on board, I believe, with one of them right now, as the Hakims are potentially eyeing out for another target they can fight against. Some shots coming in from the Hakims as well, trying to land it out against their opponents on the other side of this one, but way too far of a distance right now, at least for the guns that you could see Toucan working with specifically. We'll have to wait to see if they can get on Spectre and the rest of that squad sitting across the other side of Barometer.
It's a change-up, though, too. We Don't Play was the ones that made the drop over here and got the win against the other squad. This time, they go to Shipfall. So yet again, Barometer getting 2, but it's just a rotating door of teams that are in an awkward spot. Fortunately, though, at least this time the circle is closer, so there's a couple of pathing options directly to the north to get away.
Going to potentially turn into a bit of an awkward circle depending on which way it goes. If we drift a little bit more towards the northwest, it'll probably be fine and this won't be a concern. But if we end up on like the central or more southern end of this one, it'll be a huge swath of open territory. Not going to end up with that like full like 8 to 9 squad stack that we had in Zone 3 towards the end of last game. Will be very, very difficult to achieve that positioning. So squads will, in my opinion, be wanting to try and get there earlier rather than later, as it will be quite difficult to try and suddenly show up to the party given the limited amount of space there will be to play for should the circle drift down to that part of the map.
It feels like whenever we get a circle like this, checkpoint, the due south of this circle, or sometimes even around Mill, gets a lot of love. So with the way that teams have dropped, it feels like that might be the lean-in on factor for it. We do look like that we're going to see the separation start to come out from our teams down around Barometer. But let's not forget about what's going up around North Pad. We do have two teams that are pretty close to each other as well, and that's one of our teams that are going to be on our hunt to try to pick up more points in Baguette.
Baguette already in the midst of an engagement here, trying to push forward onto their opponents. Haven't been able to directly contest against it at this very moment. That's going to be changing over the next few seconds. As you can see, Abaleek's going up, trying to land some shots over here, coming out from the G7. Has one cracked on Flash, just needs to finish them off now. 1 to 2 shots will finish off Cruellum. Problem for Cruellum as well. So far behind compared to the rest of their teammates, having to take a step back and a go for the heal. That's only doomed them, though, to an extended engagement here. Taylor, not in the game, apparently. We'll have to check in on that in a second, as we're back over with Abaleek, who should be able to get the down onto Cruellum. And there we go, the full finish along with it. Cruellum's teammates not long for sticking around to try and bail that player out. They're just going to take the L on that fight, lose their one player, and potentially try to scavenge back over towards that to reignite that player's fire for another fight a little bit later on in this game, if they can get the res off, of course, and haven't just fully abandoned them.
But who hears this? Is it Viper Squad? Does Viper Squadron have 3? Do they want to party finally? Looks like they can finally be the aggressor instead of hiding out. And they're coming in. They line up, get some damage off the start of this. Not enough to lead into an instant charge, but if they can manage to connect onto one of these well enough, that'll open up the gates. Right Zone and the rest of his squad still playing on the opposite side of Baguette. So Baguette, now the aggressor just a second ago, finds themselves in a squished or sandwiched position as Viper Squadron doesn't look like they want to relent.
Tricky 2x there on the charge rifle coming in as well. Not able to land the shots as well as they would have liked here, but as well going to be trying to catch them, as I believe they just Valculted away, and indeed they did. There we go. Full 3-player squad from Baguette heading away from this one. Just going to be trying to go towards the edge of the circle, over towards the launch pad to make sure that they stay close, but not too far detached from any potential fight as well. Going to be able to go over here, spend some credits, get themselves back up to full HP.
Viper Squadron is just running after them. They don't even care. They're still just on their feet, charging across this location like, okay, we know where they went.
Yeah, look,
finally,
they're coming back towards them now, look.
They stopped because I think that they realized Riot Zone was following them, trying to get involved in the fight.
We can see here as well, someone else is going to go for their redeploy now on the Valkyrie. I believe that's going to end up being the team that was chasing them down a second ago, so that should be Viper Squadron going up into the air. They might be heading toward, no, they're going to head directly on top of Baguette. Man. So as we can see there, I believe that was DN or GD sitting back there before, who had lost a player or two and had been hunted out by the members of Baguette. They're now potentially going to be able to get that squad member back, or at least one of them. We can see one had expired when we were on their POV a second ago. But the real focus here is on this fight with Baguette, as they now have their opponents trapped. And this is going to be a big play from Taylor, going for the direct contestation up on top. It's risky here. They can obviously fight back just as strongly, but the nades are going in. The damage should be coming in along with that, although we're not seeing the numbers translate just as of yet here. Taylor has to bail quickly. Not quick enough, though, as they'll end up going down towards the bottom of this one. That'll be a potential siren call for their opponents on the other side of this one, coming in for Viper Squadron to reignite and try to fully knock out Baguette, but we're not seeing that just as of yet. The black hole holds them back for a split second. Abaleek's now trying to hold the tide back, as we see at least one player from the squad jumping down to engage in the fight. Baguette split up far too much, unfortunately. They have one cracked out here, but unfortunately it's only Perret as the last standing member of Baguette now, and it looks like he just has to bail out of this situation so we can try to rat for positioning.
Yeah, he's got to abandon Northpad, which has got a lot of strength to it, and Viper Squadron picking up their third member, finally coming in, having to play passive for 2 games, says we're done with that. We've got goals. We're going to jump into the firefight. And now Baguette, our team that took the first round, running away with just 1 player still up. And maybe Viper Squadron feels an opportunity surging.
You saw how they were able to perform specifically back in game number 1. There are only 2 players in the squad, but regardless, most kills in the game. And that kept them in the top 3 positioning. Unsure where they ended up when we checked in on things after game 2. Unfortunately, they weren't able to pull off all that much in game 2. That disadvantage came back to haunt them in a pretty big way. Twiggy here potentially has some opponents sitting in front of him. I'm pretty sure we just saw one crossing past him, but we'll check on that in a second, as it looks like he may have not noticed it, or at the minimum was just able to avoid that there, and is going to be skirting past it while he looks to regroup with the rest of his teammates. Away from that, though, seems like everything in their part of the map has gone down a bit more quietly here. It's faded off a bit more as they finally got some control for themselves and are going to be able to move past that. Looks like it might have been Pare, that last player alive as well, over on Baguette, that's been able to escape away from the situation. Hasn't recovered either one of his teammates' banners as well. So absolutely just going to be playing for that placement positioning. The problem is, though, is I'm pretty sure they were aware of his escape and saw which direction he was heading. So he might not be out of the hot zone just as of yet here.
Do also want to point out that our team that is presently in first is outside of the ring right now, not capable of moving in, as they did make the move from Shipfall into Barometer and are now just being gate kept out. It's going to be Hakims that are aware of their positioning and just holding this. They don't have a real need to move just yet, but with the new circle popping, going to the west, does look like we're going to be in that downed area, the mill area, leaning into the far west yet again. Now it's going to be about trying to get to that gravity pad and trying to get away, and unfortunately Hakims cannot connect on the shots, but even with that, we don't play having to move to the east. Away from the circle means it's going to be a long wrap for them.
Viper Squadron did get themselves into another potential fight. They are still trying to hunt down that last player on Baguette, but in the process, they ended up running into a whole new squad entirely. It's Chaika, as well as the rest of his team, that have managed to run headfirst into them. Deja Vu did get fully eliminated while this was going on as well, and we can see here, obviously, Dominus and the rest of the players over here on Viper Squadron, just going to be able to loot things out on the inside of the armory. They'll go for the safety of that, but they do have to be careful, as there is that other squad down to their southwest. Looks like they faded away from the actual engagement, though. Going to be able to peel off of that a little bit. Things are getting a little close for comfort down towards the center of our circle, but it is going to be some time before we see those players come to blows. They've got a good amount of separation between each other still.
Just doing some mob farming for Viper Squadron. Not content. They've shot their guns not enough this game, and they need to do it some more. Picking up some more utility to work with. Looks like also getting some more ammo. Going to be prepped for a good position moving in, and this is great for an aggressive team. They are going to have to be moving in along the north, where there's pretty open, to be honest. Let's be clear. Checkpoints not have a single team in it. It's going to be the south again. That is going to be the problem, as it looks like we could have three different teams. As remember, Riot Zone was by his lonesome, now finding himself between two different squads and what could be about four different squads, depending on how these rotations come into play.
Curious what Viper Squadron is actually going to get on this one. We can see one of their players already working with a gold R99. It's not really sure how much they can improve on their current loot pool. They might as well get what they can get here. Get a little bit of a juice up on their shields as well. I think both were still sitting on purple, so gets them a little bit closer in that respect to their reds as well, I believe, as they continue to move across the map. We're going to catch up with TXC here, who haven't caught up with a whole lot in this game. They are in the midst of trying to start a fight with another opponent, but doesn't really look like that opponent wants the fight, as they're, well, retreating past TXC's position at the current moment.
Whenever we look into this, Manifanzi is still up, and that's going to be right in between them and Hakims. We don't play, still not coming to the circle. It looks like they are playing very, very passive, and that might cost them, like we were talking about a second ago. You can see now what it's going to be like for Matty Fanzi and the rest of his team, is it is going to be Hakims that are making a move pretty close to this. So they're just going to jump around it, and they're going to get that one for free.
Oh, they're both going to go up.
Okay, well, looks like the same idea at the same time. Are they also going to drop in the same location?
Definitely heading for the same general area. They'll have to split from each other. At least that would be the assumption. The Hakims might want the fight anyway, though. But yeah, they're going to bail out here at the last second. They end up veering a little bit further towards the left just to get some distance between themselves and their potential opponent sitting across the way there. So they avoid this one. As you were mentioning before, we're not really seeing a whole lot of engagement from a We Don't Play. It seems like they may have adapted a new strategy of really only trying to force the fight when it's forced upon them, or when we get to a later point in the circle here, as that's where they were really able to thrive in the last game as well. There took some good control, but it got very dodgy in that final circle for them, so maybe wanting to try and save some of their energy, more importantly some of their healing mats, the batteries and whatnot, before, or rather until, they get to that point in the game.
We have an interesting situation where almost everybody is playing to the west right now. The entirety of the northeast is pretty much open. The circle does go into the southwest, so that means that everybody that was playing in that cluster very, very favored. Most strong positions already claimed, as we still have Akim's very close to Matafanzi and his team. So this is going to be a competition for potentially around the mill area, but they've got to be careful. Look on the map there to the northeast, it's entirely open. It's just that western coast and the south and that tip in the north where Down Beast is at that's got cover. Everything else is pretty open.
And with the Hakims, who have finally found a target to potentially jump upon, once again, though, they do not want the fight. They do not want this at this point. Want to get a little bit deeper into the circle, over towards safer pastures on the inside of that cube building. Going to be working away from it, though, as the Hakims realize now that their opponents have made it into that building, this is not really an advantageous fight for them. You can see a third party drifting off to the left side there as well. Finally seeing who is on the other side of this one. It's Vertex MGA that managed to skirt past the Hakims and make it to the inside of this one, but they're going to be safe now for the foreseeable future, just to make sure they can kind of maintain the passiveness of the current scenario here and don't leave a window open for another squad, whether it's going to be the Hakims or anyone else, as we do have that third party just around the corner from them as well to jump on them and compromise the safety of this building. Viper Squadron now running into some serious problems apparently here, as they are well in the midst of a fight. We did see them trying to start one earlier, and it looks like they'll end up coming out on top of this engagement here. 4 kills for the squad total, if we assume that what Twiggy has is the entirety of the kills count total for this team. They're sitting at 4 at the moment, which will put them on a good path, of course, to working back in the game. But you have to remember, they were, for the most part, a no-show in Game 2, so they are working from behind at this point. May not see immediate results, even if this game is a knock out of the park for them.
Into it, they're going to be coming down from the downed beast position, and should actually find a favorable spot on that, as most of the north has been evacuated for a lean into the cliff sides. As you can see, that's where so many of our teams have opted into this. TXC is playing into the south. They've got control over to this area, and might be we don't play who's going to be encroaching on the opposite side of Mill, but that's really about the only thing that they're going to have to contend with. Hakim, though, and they're just kind of roaming into the north of this, using that decline in the hill to their favor and managing to avoid the sight lines for now. But with the approach that we see coming in for a couple of these teams, most notably the last member that we can see coming up from Baguette, as well as Dominus and the rest of the crew that are going to be coming in over there for Viper Squadron, they might get spotted quite quickly.
Surprised to see Parade continuing to maintain that positioning for the Baguettes, but as we had talked about 2 to 3 minutes ago, had that entirety of the valley to try and work through on the far east side of this circle, so ended up getting very lucky with the way the rotates panned out. That or Parade was just very, very forward thinking, as we're going to see the Hakims once again trying to move forward. They've got an opponent sitting directly in front of them here. They'll mitigate some of the pressure coming out by throwing out the Seer ultimate. The Black Hole goes in as well to try to suck them up from the other side of this rock. Doesn't work, doesn't have enough pull though, is not going to force them into the fight. The Hakims, you have to remember, are already down a player from the start of this engagement. Also, so having to be very cautious with just how aggressive they can be. They've realized that this isn't it. This isn't really the winning fight for themselves, but they may not have an option now. As you can see, a third party from their flank side has cut them off. Toucan has nowhere to run. Looks like Hakim himself made it out of this scenario, but for Toucan, may have bitten off more than he can chew from the scenario. Just as I say that, though, seems like it gets over the hillside, but he's got more pressure sitting right on top of him. Not out of the hot seat just yet, as that third party has finally come to collect and has taken down not only his teammate, but him as well, leading to the full elimination of the Hakims.
This isn't over just yet, though, as we have a stack of teams. New Circle has revealed itself. It's staying into the west. Now it's all about the stack up. It looks like We Don't Play finally wanting to get involved, as Viper Squadron do have a close team, but they're going to be stepping away, moving back into the north of it. And again, it's going to be about the cluster to the south and how everything's starting to line up. It looks like Clippers might yet again have a close range position right next to We Don't Play, as Viper Squadron do manage to move back into the north. And have they spotted out the last member of Baguette? It does seem to be the case, as it looks like Baguette is not going to be too long for this world.
See if they can make it any further. Top 7 placement wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them. We saw them take a fight earlier, so potentially 1 or 2 KPs going up onto the board, but overall, Pro Squad currently sitting in 2nd place. Definitely would have wanted to try and make things a bit deeper, but considering the early fight they took, they also had the consequence to pay for losing that fight. Indeed, as we can see there now, Twiggy finishing off Terenez, and finishing off Baguette's hopes of coming back into this game and claiming some more points towards the tail end. TXC mid-rotate right now, but potentially rotating into a dangerous portion of the map. Is going to go over the fight regardless, though. They've got another squad sitting directly in front of them, and they have taken up that position, ready to fight.
And it's going to be up against you-know-who, Viper Squadron, who has been active this whole way, now trying to line up and realize the fact that they've had somebody that's tried to take over their home territory and not about it. Nades coming out everywhere. Arc starts getting the damage off. Got to be careful, though, as the exchange coming through. Viper Squadron is geared and prepped for this firefight. Full on reds. Biohazard already getting a down, and now it is just about the charge. It is about to become unrelenting. No way to get away from this one. Sarah just trying to get some space, but there's nowhere for her to go. Even with all of this going to be going on, do note that we also do have We Don't Play that's heard this, moved to the north, and looks like they might third party onto whatever's going to be going on. But I don't even think the Viper Squadron cares about that.
Yeah, no, Viper Squadron pretty much already fully reset, in my opinion, here. Barely took any damage, and even when they did, they took a very safe route, backed up and immediately full batteried up, more than likely being wary of that potential third party coming in at any moment. Beautifully done there to take out TXC and overall defend against that aggressive movement from them. We Don't Play is now on top of them, however, looking indeed for the third party that you had mentioned previously, but going to be tough to achieve it. As you can see, We Don't Play already taking some heat, specifically onto Mr. Namka. That is going to force them back away from their initial aggression. Carnova, though, still in this fray, still in a very tough angle to deal with, and is causing a lot of problems on the other side of the table there. Microdrones make the connection, though, interrupt the heal for Carnova, but thankfully he's got the gold shield, so it's not going to be the end of the world. Has the quick revive should the need arise, and now the black hole out. Is it going to pull in these opponents, though? Looks like it manages to snag two of them. They'll try to move away from it, but they're only moving right into the crosshairs of Carnova and the rest of this squad. Namka at the same time, though, taking a lot of heat as the damage is still coming out from Viper Squad on the other end of it. They'll lose one of their own players. They have two of them broken. Now it's going to be on this flank from Carnova, but he's a little late. Full shield gets off on the Valkyrie. They're going to be back into the fight now. Back to full HP. Carnova goes back for a shield swap to reset things. Re-breaks the Valk, but he's out of ammo, out of HP, and now it's all in a Rom Exo plays. Trying to clutch this one out. Did force his opponents out of the building at a minimum, is making them run, but it's still Viper Squadron in charge of the situation. Getting the full elimination off onto our current leaders, and We Don't Play. Another squad, though, going to be jumping onto him. Is Viper Squadron ready to take another fight? It seems like the answer is yes, as they immediately get another down onto Matt Fanzi.
Instant response coming out from this one. Viper Squadron realizing that they need to continue the aggression, and they will not relent. Stepping into this, everybody's come to their territory. They want to play, and everybody is falling. This is a team from Viper Squadron that knows the fact that they've got control over this area. They do have a team that's going to be coming up back behind them, but they do not care. They have their eyes set on making sure that they can get control over this. There is a building fight that is happening down to the southwest of this one, but Viper Squadron is just continuing. Now leaving their compound saying, no, this is our home. We're going to tear you down before we move into the circle. And now Vertex is down, and the unrelenting charge of Viper Squadron is about to continue.
Already at least a 9-kill game from Viper Squadron. Going to be looking to make it more than that, as we have 9 players left in the game at this point. As you can see, though, FMA not long for this world. Anubis and at least one more of them low. There we go. The Titans now knocked out as well. Down to our final 6 here. As indeed, Clippers is going to have to try and get themselves back up to full HP as quickly as possible. Here you have the Onslaught coming back in from Biohazard and the rest of the Viper Squadron looking to clean up on what's been a phenomenal game so far, and no reason why they wouldn't be able to get the job done. Here comes the turnaround, though, from their opponents trying to win it out instead, but they can't get the job done. Viper Squadron just cannot be stopped here in game number 3. They shut it down, and they're going to contend against We Don't Play to try and steal away that first place finish.
That is going to be a massive game, and now it's just going to be about how much did they manage to pick up. You mentioned the fact that due to the fact that they only had 2 at the start in the first 2 games, they didn't manage to ring up as many points as they wanted. But with a game like that and still having at least gotten placement points, a couple of kills in those early 2 games, they might now be in the running to assault first place.
Yeah, like we said, unfortunately, due to the results from game number 2, probably going to be a little bit of a tough reach to try and get them into first place all the way on this game. But we were already surprised once with the results we got out of just We Don't Play's performance, so probably not going to be too much of a surprise if once again we see another team leapfrog the current first place finish and is able to take that up. Another consideration, too, We Don't Play, like we said, not really able to get into the fights as much as they would have liked from that one. They were being gate kept pretty often there, so that kept them out of the heat. And they didn't really make it that deep in terms of placement finishes either, so they were going to be in a real lack for points here. That was more likely was going to be stemming the tide on their lead being potentially taken away, but if they ended up with pretty minimal points from this game, we could end up seeing it potentially stolen from this one. Baguette as well, failing to make a real impact there as they lost far too many of their players right at the beginning, and yes, they had a rat make it into the top 10, but still not going to be able to make too much of an overall point difference here to try to hold on to second place. That more than likely will fall to Viper Squadron, at least once we get those point totals up on the board, of course.
I'm so shocked that all of the highlights are Viper Squadron. Who would have thought? I mean, they were just capable of dealing with so much of what was going on around them. I mean, you got to respect it. Never tunnel visioning, never losing sight on what was going on with even third parties aggressing around them. I can say that there's like maybe once or twice where we did see somebody manage to sneak behind them and get a couple of shots, but that doesn't even really count because like they were so involved in everything from the get-go. They're the ones that took down Baguette. They're the ones that weakened them. They were the ones that were chasing everywhere. You can see the fact that they don't even care, charging into opponents' Gibby shields because they still think that they have advantage. And that's the way you want to see the winners play. It's just all about setting the pace, setting the momentum, and making everybody play to what they're setting out. No reaction coming out from them. It's all about setting the pace every step of the way.
And we can see the results and how they've translated here quite beautifully, as you guys might expect, just off of our stats alone. Biohazard definitely topping it out in his first appearance. Lucky number 7's there on the KDA as well. It's nice to see that. But 2,200 damage overall from this game with his teammates at 1,700 and 1,300 respectively. Beautiful performance coming out from the majority of them. 14 kills, though, sitting specifically on Biohazard. Once again, that is going to be a big jump. Even more impressive than what we saw out of We Don't Play just in the previous matchup there. So some really, really great stuff there. And keep in mind, too, that quite a few of these fights that they managed to win, it's not just them being, blindly aggressive throughout the course of this game and managing to find good positioning. They were having to defend quite often, too, such as a squad jumping directly onto them after they managed to, I think it was We Don't Play they had knocked out, and then another squad pretty much immediately got onto them, and even then, they were still able to push back some of that pressure. So just really, really well managed inside of some of those intense team fights to be able to keep themselves in front. Very well deserved here to pick up as many kills as they did.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the damage totals. You can see the fact that they were involved in the fight. There's no kill stealing going on with this crew. They were the instigators in so much of what's going to be happening. And 17 kills walking away, as well as first place, almost nets them 30 points. And that is going to be a massive come up when we're going to be making our way over to the next leaderboard to see how everything is going to be lining through. It's no surprise the fact that we've seen a 3 split coming through. Baguette, We Don't Play, Viper Squadron, each having themselves a game. But how big was Viper Game Squadron, and where do they sit on the overall leaderboard?
And there we go. We're going to see just 2 points behind We Don't Play now. Like we said, it's going to be difficult for them to try and take first place outright on their first game like that, just because of the difference between them and We Don't Play. Remember, they had a game with basically no points back in game number 2 because they were still working with 2 players instead of 3, but now they've got their full 3 squad. They are immediately back into it and have nearly taken the crown. A little bit more work to do, though, as they are now ahead in eliminations, but struggling a little bit in those placement points due to what happened in game 2. So we're going to see if they can make up for that now as we get ready to go for our 4th dive.
I'm just going to say a Biohazard. You owe Twiggy and dominance, man. They were scrapping. They were trying to get every point that they could beforehand. So you best come in and showcase. And that last game, it was a showcase. Big performance coming out from them. With this 2-point differential, though, that just means it's going to get more fun moving in these last couple of games. And like you said, we saw We Don't Play had a big game. But with the pathing into the circle, they really couldn't find an easy path or an easy opening inside of that one. And really, I don't know if it was gate kept or if it was just more the fact that they didn't want to over-aggress. And in any case, it made for them just not capable of having a repeat performance of what we saw in game number 2.
I think that they expected for this game's kills to be a little bit more evenly spread amongst most of the teams. They weren't really expecting another squad, specifically Viper Squadron 2, considering that they got their 3rd back and they really came alive with that factor. They weren't really expecting another team to have a performance quite like they did in game number 1. Obviously, I think that expectation is going to change now as we get ready to head into game number 4. They realize the pressure's on and against them. They don't have anywhere near the buffer anymore, so more than likely going to see a little bit more of those aggressive tendencies reactivate. Could end up seeing the drop that they went for back in game number 2. They ended up contesting directly against the other team towards Barometer. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out as they've shifted their own landing zone quite a few times, heading over towards the ship, I believe, just on the last game. So we'll have to check in on that once again once we see how they're going to land and if they're going to be trying to get adventurous to find early kills like we saw back in game number 2.
If anything, though, I feel this puts the most pressure on Baguette. Not having they did get a win, but they didn't have as stellar a performance as we've seen coming out from these last 2 round wins. And then, even that, it was Viper Squadron that did the massive amount of damage to them inside of the previous round. So, now sitting, I think, about 15 points behind, this is a team that's not going to be content with that. The question is, how hard do they want to push it? The 2 games left, they can just try to go for an average and 2 decent games, or they can just try to pedal the metal 2 times, and maybe if it doesn't work once, it'll work the second time, but that's a far riskier approach.
Yeah, if they manage to get lucky here as well, and We Don't Play, or our Viper Squadron, kind of our new potential leader coming up as well here, end up with a bad game. They end up getting caught in the earlier portions of the run. As we've seen both of these other teams have happened to them now, that could be another window of opportunity where if the Baguettes are allowed to go out and have a game like they had in game number 1, they don't have to go crazy like we just saw in these last 2 games. They only need like 5, 10 kills, something in that neighborhood, and then on top of the placement there, if their other contenders in 1st and 2nd place don't end up getting that many points in this one, they can be right back into it and could make for a real challenge going into game number 5 if they have one more of those decent positioning and they're able to outwit teams like the Viper Squadron as well as We Don't Play.
Here's the issue, though. Viper Squadron with 2 can still find kills and still find the late game. Now with 3, I feel like you're going to have to be competing against the amount of points that they're going to be trying to put up, because I know how Viper Squadron likes to play. They're not going to play a more passive style here. They're going to continue to try to go after these kills, and they're going to try to push that lead as far as they can, which could be a double-edged sword of its own and provide Baguette its opportunity.
It's going to come with its own series of risks for Viper Squadron. We'd already seen a few squads trying to get aggressive in the early portions of Game 2 and paying the price for it, leaving them ultimately with nothing. So Viper Squadron finally ends up tripping up here. That can leave them in a bad position and leave a window of opportunity open for the Baguettes we don't play, or potentially another squad to surprise us here. Either way, folks, we're getting into the tail end of today's event here. Just 2 more drops left. We're getting ready for the 4th one now. We'll take a peek once again at the Legend Select, see if anything's going to be departing from normality. It's been pretty straightforward so far here, and I don't believe anything's going to be shifting going into the next game. The play styles for each squad have been working out, so more than likely going to end up with the same lineups.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of focus in rotation, especially given the fact that the way the circles have gone. That's no surprise. Getting out of very bad situations has been the key, not necessarily trying to hold down positions. We've seen also a lot of very hard shifted circles, time and time again, which has led to a huge need to try to rotate.
That might explain why we saw Wraith come in for the Hakims. I don't believe they were running that before. That's the only change-up that I really noticed. And actually, they're not even going to stick with that, as we're actually on them to start here. They ended up going back to what they had originally had selected, so never mind. Ignore my point. The Wraith's portal will not be coming into play for this one. I'll have to wait and see how they're going to be able to work things with the normal lineup, as they still have the Valkyrie as well as Horizon movement abilities that should be able to help them out. Even the Black Hole in an emergency situation can be useful for just getting an opponent off of your flank or something similar. So we're going to be rocking with that. And it'll be similar lineups across the rest of the teams as well. Vertex, for instance, running a mirror composition to what we were just seeing over there on the Hakims a moment ago. So seems like this is very much the meta comp for quite a few of these. As we get dropped, though, it's looking like once again Vertex MGA has apparently landed in a bit of a hot facility. You'll see at least a little bit of damage going on to these players. You know, if we see over here, over towards the top end of the map, they'll have contested against them pretty much immediately from Cheka and the rest of that squad.
Wall can technically support 2 teams depending on how they want to play this one out, but I feel this might just be a hit-and-run loot strategy, as everybody is just going for the things wide out in the open, and looks like they're trying to move out. Vertex is looking in to chase this one. I don't know how aggressive they're wanting to get in, as it's going to be the team is just to the south of their position. You can see that the Clippers are doing a good job on just holding the line for now, not really too involved in anything that's going to be going on in the process of looting. And the circle has popped, and it's more centered than we've been seeing so far.
That is going to leave a little bit more of an even opportunity for all of our squads. For the most part, though, we have most of our teams landing at kind of that southwest portion of the map, so about half of the teams already inside of the circle. This fight going well into it, though. Neither team trying to back away from it. Clippers hard committed to it. Unfortunately, still working with primarily white shields, so
Viper Squadron is eliminated.
Oh, wow. Viper Squadron going down. That's exactly what we were talking about in the pregame. We needed a team to mess up, take a huge risk at the beginning, and potentially lose it. And Viper Squadron has, unfortunately, just done that. So there's the window of opportunity open now for the Baguettes, for We Don't Play, to come back into this one and maintain, and We Don't Play's case, but as well for Baguette's case, come back into the leaderboard here.
Shot's going to be coming out, and it's just trying to get away at this point. Looks like that's what they're going to end up doing, but hey, go ahead and finish off Maddie, and so Vertex does get away. The cost is pretty high, but I think that should at least, now as they're around high point, they should be able to loot up. I don't know if they'll be able to get back and maybe go for a res potential on him, though, as it doesn't look like their Clippers are in any rush to move anywhere.
Curious to see who actually knocked out Viper Squadron in the meanwhile there. Obviously a big victory for whoever was able to achieve that feat, but still surprising nonetheless, given how comfortable they seemed with those early kind of aggressive fights being thrown against them, and even better, their capability to successfully defend those too, but ended up not being able to maintain at the end of the day. And it very well might have been the Hakims, as we do see they have some credit to work with here already, but they're well on their way to fending off another challenger that's been thrown against them here. Ready for the engagement. A lot of incendiary damage coming back out against them. The pressure back in. We're going to see Horizon jump up to get them into the fight as well. Mateen being cornered here. He has nowhere to run. Down to 2 here for the Hakims. Now soon to be 1 potentially, as Hakim himself holding down behind his opponent. His teammates down shield. It's working out beautifully here to try and maintain himself inside of the fight. He's got pressure coming from the outside window now as well. Wants to go for a shield swap on that wipe, but there's nothing left on it. Just has to back away towards the outside of the situation. No hard scan onto him, so he can go for a shield swap up on top, but he's obviously very exposed here. Needs to find a way to get back into the fight quickly and safely, as all of his opponents, for the most part, working with full shields, full purple for the most part, too. So Akeem is just not long for this fight at the moment. His other teammate down as well, more than likely has to back away from the situation, if at all possible, but he's just been scouted again, so more than likely that possibility now gone.
And guess who it's going to? We don't play on the opposite side. Looks like they're at least going to be able to pick up 2, make that 3, and now the gates come open. With Viper Squadron down, looks like We Don't Play picking up kills early. They've now got a path into the circle that's easy. They're pretty much already inside the circle. They just got to take like 5 steps forward. And now it looks like they've found their pathing that was being a problem inside the last game. They're in the circle, and now what can they do with it?
Speaking of our teams, too, we are going down very, very quickly. Another squad's been fully wiped out. I believe that's 3 at least full wipes already just in the span of the first circle closing. Not even, really. We're only halfway through its closure. So a lot of deaths happening compared to normal. We're starting to see that aggression come in as teams are getting hungry for those points here towards the tail end of the tournament. They're trying to make up time as best as possible. For We Don't Play, trying to maintain their positioning in first place now that Viper Squadron has gone down. We Don't Play, unless they were the squad to outright wipe them out, they may not be aware of that fact yet. Might have just kind of swept by them there on the kill feed. They might not have noticed it, so more than likely going to be playing kind of aggressively to make sure they still keep themselves in first place. But if they have caught on to it, and consider the fact that they've got at least 1 full squad wipe, you could expect them to try to take their foot off the gas for the next few moments here and wait till we get towards those final circles to maybe drift towards another fight, just because of the fact that they should be pretty safe now with those KPs rather secured for the last fight.
Whenever we're looking at this, most teams have moved around that barometer and that southwestern area of the circle. With a fight in the north also that allows Baguette to have a much easier pathing into this than they had in the last couple of games. Already have their eyes set in direction on this one, as it is going to be a close-range fight that is already starting to pop off for TXC, as they've got friends very close range. Verticality going to come into play, and that was a quick okie-doke, just runs right back behind him. Quick spray to follow up as well, but as the micro-drones come out, you've got to make sure you slow it down. Make sure you don't overextend, because that can be the doom of so many teams. TXC has themselves a way to play this one, and they want to play it together.
Red Faded, meanwhile, wants no part of this fight. They are well on the retreat at the moment here. Going to try and get the Valcult off if they have the option to as well. 2 players, 3 players connected to it. Oh, that's going to be a lot of damage on the Valk. It looks like she's just able to get to the sky, and no, they get picked off. They won't even make it to the top as well. Won't be able to fade away from this one. They are back into the fray here, and Red Fade, not long for this world, it seems. Mogonticus, the only one left inside of the fight now. He managed to get a little bit more distance going, but is not going to be able to escape from the looks of things. Red Fade down and out for the count, as we are nearly into our top 5 already, with the first circle just now closing in about 10 seconds.
I guess we could call them Red Faded now, as they are out of this lobby. Looks like we do see Baguette moving into a more aggressive position. Well played by TXC. How are we going to see this next circle go, as it does look like Matt Fandy and the rest of the team for, I believe that is a Vertex, are way out there, and I think that's just dealing with the circle. Now, oh, here we go. We don't play. This is your circle. You got control. What do you want to do with it?
The entire circle is theirs for the taking at the moment. Even on the outskirts, we've got a few squads. We don't play. Looking like they might actually be drifting over towards another team as well. And then Vertex way over in the northeast here at the moment here, trying to keep themselves in the fight at full strength. But they did get the res. Yeah, looks like they did actually. So they're back up to full strength, as Matty Fanzy was the one that went down. So he's been brought back in. They got the full 3 squad working with it. Back on board with Baguette in the meanwhile, who is holding on to the extremity of the southwestern part of the circle at the moment here, trying to see if they can potentially catch that other squad that is trying to close in on them as well here. Baguette, another team sitting on our top 3, trying to look to close in on it, but they sit a little bit further behind compared to the rest of our teams. So they've got a bit more work to do. And oh, what's this? They've got someone landing directly on top of them as they take control of this tower. So this is going to get interesting.
Oh, comes around the corner. Raymond, you did not want to do that. Takes a face full of bullets. Has to step away from it. Baguette now getting the authority position inside. Realize the fact that they don't all have to force their way through this one, but looks like they might just opt into that. Make sure that they do not allow the capabilities for res. Numbers advantage, and as well as gunplay advantage, leaning into Baguette at the time. But we also do hear Riot Zone. The rest of the team hearing this, they might choose to third party. There is an opportunity as they're trying to run for the gravity well. It looks like they are going to at least be able to get away. Actually, no. They got a car heading over there.
Made you think twice about it. This definitely looked like the cannon was going to be the way of escape at first, but thankfully they had the hidden car tucked away. There might have actually been some other players, too, involved in this one. We could see some players scooting towards this, having to try and run back into the neighborhood. Baguette, though, cracking out at least one of them, the Valkyrie going down. More targets sitting in front as they try to eliminate them. The Valkyrie just barely evading their shots as she sneaks underneath of the bridge right there. Still not in safe pastures. Might have been able to sneak a cell or two off, but at the same time, Obelix doesn't want to jump into this one alone. Has to wait for teammates to catch back up and dodge that sear charge, of course. Now seeing the presence back down from underneath.
God.
More cracks going back out. It's the sear that's broken now. The Valk probably not too much stronger in that respect. There we go. She ends up going down. Another one back into the corner. The Valk will at least be able to get her Q off to re-engage onto this fight, but it's more than anything just to try and escape. Doesn't work, however. TXC caught out by Baguette as they have at least one full squad wipe under their belt now.
All of the West now belongs to Baguette as shooting somebody off the ropes. Man, that one always hurts. We are looking at 5 squads left in a much calmer circle. Keep in mind, Antenna is inside the circle, so a lot of our teams leaning that direction, but does mean the fact that we are kind of looking at a sectioned out circle where we see Baguette playing from. There's not going to be any teams that'll probably encroach around there unless maybe somebody wraps to the north. So quiet times for them. But Antenna has the capabilities of getting loud as We Don't Play. Looks like they're eyeing that area.
We Don't Play, of course, going to have to be very careful as they're definitely in more of a powder keg scenario than their opponents, potentially contending for first place, at least are on the other side in Baguette. The good news is they can potentially turn that powder keg into a golden keg if they're able to properly leverage the fights coming out against them. Remember, of course, that We Don't Play still safely in first place, past Baguette by about 15 to 20 points or so the last time we checked in on the leaderboard. So the more kills they get out of this powder keg scenario, the better they are going to be prepared for any potential comeback that Baguette may try to make sure things go awry. And we see an earlier elimination against We Don't Play here. At the same time, of course, Baguette can take those very same points if they're able to capture them from the outskirt position that they are currently working with. We're on board with Vertex, though, who's going to be sneaking in towards the east side of this circle. Will move in without too much contestation. They've got a lot of building coverage between them and their nearest opponents, which are once again going to be We Don't Play, as well as our other remaining squad, sitting much more towards the center of Antenna currently.
Yeah, it's pretty calm now, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. Teams have some idea that they've got some company, but no overt aggression coming out right now, just kind of letting everything stew for a moment. This is a fairly large circle, but with everybody now starting to eye Antenna in that direction, we could see a couple of pot shots come out, as it looks like the Clippers might have 2, maybe even 3 teams' sights that are going to be set on them. The circle is going to pop in just a few seconds, and that's going to dictate rotations, craziness, and if we're going to see chaos over an Antenna. And looks like it's going to be most of our teams that were leaning north having to make quick moves. So Matafandi and the rest of his team now in an opportune spot to get a strong position.
It was looking like it was going to be actually a pretty safe final circle for almost all 5 of our teams here. Give us a pretty even chance to come out on top. But now with this most recent circle shift, that is going to be departing, especially for the northern extremity here. At this team now trying to land themselves on the inside of it. The Clippers are the ones, unfortunately, that will be forced to go for the reposition, and they won't necessarily find the safest harbor either. It is going to be a building they should be able to control outright, but they've got players surrounding them in essentially every single direction, so they're going to have to constantly keep the eyes in the back of their heads open here if they want to survive past the next fight that's thrust upon them.
Already taking some damage. Looks like Joji has to be careful with it, as we are now getting 3 teams vying around this position, and so with this means the fact that they're going to start getting a lot more attention as the 4th and Riot Zone and his team looking into the backside of what's going to be going on with Vertex. So Clippers do get themselves into a stronger point, but on the opposite side of that's going to be Baguette, and they've got themselves a pretty toy to try to see if they can get control. With this choke point, they own everything to the south. This is actually really, really well played. I like this. Use the hillside to create yourself some cover. Nobody is back behind you right now because they made sure to clear all that out. So they've essentially just forced everybody to stack up into this position and firefight. The only team that might vary from this is We Don't Play, who might wrap around to the north and come down or back behind them.
Obelix, the restraint here, potentially coming back to haunt him. Had an open shot onto, I believe, was the horizon. From the other team sitting on the inside, but just didn't want to take the shot this early on. Wouldn't have known how to follow that up. Potentially, team didn't really have a plan to proceed forward, so the restraint ends up winning in this scenario, but may not win any longer here, as we are seeing at least one fight being forced upon these teams. Vertex taking a lot of heat at the moment, but they've got some support to work with. Once again, the ultimate coming in from the Watson here, potentially helping them out, but now losing it as it is going to be shot back out. Won't be able to mitigate those nades anymore. The black hole is a little bit deeper into it, blocking out some vision, but again, the third party coming back in. You are managing at the domination from the south side. Leaves so much room open here for Baguette to play into it, but they're going to have to be careful. If you check out the map, and you'll notice it in a moment, over towards the southwest flank, we've got We Don't Play sneaking in, potentially going to be able to capitalize on all this craziness going on inside of the village itself, and come in with a big third-party sweep, depending on how late they make it to the party. But the big focus right now is on how much damage Baguette is doing on the inside of this scenario, but that third party has now finally arrived. It's We Don't Play going to be causing some serious problems for Baguette as they try to end their run.
Ooblex just barely makes it around there after getting some shields back up. Arcstar is doing a lot of work and opening the doors for him. We have all the teams converging on this location, and this is going to be the party house, as Taylor is up, looking like they're wanting to try to get more aggressive into, I believe that is Clippers territory, and have been trying to defend this one up, but they've got to be careful with it. Vision's going to start popping off as Oblix is going to go down, Taylor's going to go down, and is now just pair, as we've seen beforehand. That means that We Don't Play gets the slide down the hill, and they have an open door that was kicked open for them by Baguette, and they want to strike. Opportunity, 170 damage, and it is time to follow that one up. Charge in, take control. We Don't Play feels like they've got this game, and they have the opportunity. Can they just make sure that they don't relent?
Clipper's going to end up falling down, unfortunately committed to that fight against the Baguettes, and We Don't Play for far too long. Just wasn't ready for the sudden swing in from We Don't Play, and that ends their run. Top 4 positioning now for all of our remaining squads. We Don't Play, realizing that the interior of that building is probably not going to be the best long-term position, and the fact that they had full control over the south side of the circle before, they're going to head back to that open field, try to reattain that. Another squad has taken up positioning out here in the field behind some of the dispatched vehicles while they were gone, while they were committed to that previous fight, but it doesn't seem like that's too much of a concern here for We Don't Play. Just running them over. Giogi going down next, and they already have their eyes on a new target. Andre back over towards the edge of the circle. Will have to reveal himself sooner rather than later, but at the same time, currently trying to rat this one out as the only member remaining for his team.
And they know, man. They are just... This is a hunt. This isn't a firefight. This is a hunt. And he managed to survive for a while, but Vertex goes down. Now we've got 3 teams. No surprise, it's going to be We Don't Play that has control over the circle. 2 other teams that are going to be still stacked up around Antenna, as it looks like Taylor did manage to get the reses back into this, but this is a really weakened Baguette that's having to deal with a very close range threat.
Big fan of the Eva Mozambique combo that Taylor's currently running with. This should be a real treat. It actually might work well for this upcoming fight. They're going to bring it pretty close to range, but with white shields, it's got a bit of a hard cap on how much play that Taylor can actually give. Not even going to try to support their teammate. Ubly just being left for dead. Wouldn't even really blame him in this scenario here. Taylor just wants to escape. Try to go for a regroup if they can get towards it, but yeah, we're going to see We Don't Play sneaking up on it. Taylor Perret still way down in the dish below as well. Can't really assist in this scenario. And we've got GB coming in for the crunch. This is going to be their highest finish by far. Got 2 KPs sitting as well on Cruel. I'm going to be looking to see how much they can improve upon this and how much they can wipe out amongst these last 2 opponent squads.
This is not even inside the circle, so this is a firefight for the end right now, and so this might actually benefit somehow Baguette. With GB now having to move into this one, they've got to be careful, but it's going to be a gate-kept position coming up from the other side of it with We Don't Play. Just making sure to not overstep. They're aware, they have control, they have all the vision that they need, they have the lineup in defense, they just don't need to risk too much more. Let the ring do some damage into it. Now jumping down, you can see that they're going to spot out multiple members, 2 teams that are going to be moving forward, and it's We Don't Play. They're just holding the line, and that line is putting in a massive amount of work. We Don't Play stepping away, taking near on no damage on that, and it's teams just limping in. Taylor sneaking by, and that's been it. Everyone else is dead.
Taylor's just like, I'm out of here. You guys can have fun back over there. Taylor maybe not even realizing that they're the only other player left in the game. We'll see what Taylor can potentially reckon towards here.
I like this.
Okay, never mind.
Die of the ring. Don't give up the KP.
The blaze of glory for Taylor to end it all out. But We Don't Play is going to win it off of that one. Another barnstorming game from We Don't Play as they'll get their 2nd victory of the day and their 2nd very nice point boost that should surely keep them in 1st place heading into our final game. The only remaining question now is Viper Squadron going to be close enough to be able to catch them, as unfortunately they flatlined right at the very beginning of this matchup.
And I've heard of shooting fish in a barrel, but never shooting fish in an antenna. And that's really how that game went. Man, there was just no option. That's going to be at least, what? We're looking at this 4 kills in the very late game to pick this up, which is going to be a hefty amount of kills on top of getting 12 points for victory. We don't play now feeling a lot better about this, but there's still a Baguette managed to squeeze out Taylor after dying early, at least managed to get second, right?
Yeah, absolutely the case. Considering the fact this was, for the most part, a low-kill game for all of our squads, though I doubt that We Don't Play is going to be too worried about it. They are already like 15 points ahead of Baguette. Viper Squadron, obviously not much of a threat to them because they went down in some of the first few squads. So they probably ended up with like 1-2 points only coming outside of this game. And Baguette as well, with them kind of struggling to pick up a large majority of kills, maybe getting like 3 or 4. With the boost overall from first to second place finishing points, they're going to be nice and tucked away. Just have to make sure they preserve that. Really, as far as I'm aware, it's just a matter of keeping the status quo alive at this point for We Don't Play. Just managed to get top 3, top 4 positioning, get 2 to 3 KPs beyond that, and they should be locking in a nice dub for today. This is a very nice moment from TXC as well. Just catching that team trying to run away, just popping them off from the top and shutting them down as they come back down there.
Get their taxi. The only person that got knocked going into the air was the taxi to drop the other 2 down into their waiting arms, man. That TXC played it well, but that one still hurts if you're on the other side.
Yeah, very much the case. Baguette, as we can see here, once again, still getting a good amount of kills for themselves, just unfortunately losing it as they probably evened out with We Don't Play towards the tail end of this game, and the fact that their last player alive, Taylor, was ultimately left to kind of rat the situation. Yeah, we got the res back out onto, or rather it was Pere was one of the last few left alive here, but Pere was able to get the res off onto Taylor and their other teammate. Taylor, of course, ended up making it towards the very end of the game, but just couldn't really do a whole lot as they had pretty minimal weapons coming freshly respawn towards the final circle or two. Not a whole lot that they could work towards, unfortunately. We Don't Play, of course, having the right to initiate, just slaying fight after fight here, picking up quite a few good KPs for themselves here to bolster the lead.
They don't play. It's all business whenever it comes to them, right? And this is a game that proved that. Viper Squadron going out very early provided them an opportunity, and man, did they exploit it. They went after every single bit of KP they could find. And, like, look at this. Look at this defensive line. What do you do about this? Everybody's got the ring back behind them and just absolutely unloading. Red shield, purple shield. I mean, yeah, Taylor, nothing you could do. Just
I mean, actually, in the long term, that might have been a pretty smart play from Taylor, all things considered. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that denies the final KP to an extent as well. So in the event that the scoreline's going to be close at all here, when we get the leaderboard up, possibility that 1 point could have been a make-or-break difference. More than likely, they have way too comfortable of a lead for that to matter, so we'll have to wait and see. As you can see, that this game going to be a little bit lower on the kills compared to some of our last two. A bit more of a normal finish for quite a few of these teams, but still, 1321 damage, topping it out for Mr. Namka, and about 1,000 for Ramexo Plays as well.
I mean, a good game for them, and now they've set the pace like you were talking about. Really, We Don't Play just has to make sure that they can survive. If they can just out-survive the other people that are coming after them on the leaderboard, it's going to be a good time for them. We Don't Play the only team today that has managed to put up 2 victories. But that said, Viper Squadron Baguette do have the capabilities, and we still have a mix of teams that can try to pick up a ton of kills, as in the last game, we know the wheels come off. Oof. We Don't Play sitting on a 23-point lead.
Even with the advances of Baguette as well, they're unfortunately still going to be stuck down in 3rd place. Viper Squadron surprisingly able to maintain their 2nd place finish, despite the fact that they've had 2 nearly 0-point games for themselves as well. Here, still sitting at a pretty respectable 49 with that consideration made. Probably going to be impossible for them to potentially overlap. We Don't Play might actually have a victory by default already, but we'll have to wait and see just how close their 2nd and 3rd place teams can get in the final game, especially if we end up with the unlikely scenario of We Don't Play dropping in the first few teams and they themselves having a bit of a rough game.
Well, I know everybody is sitting back if you're watching this PlayStation event and thinking, you know, I could probably compete in this. Yeah, I've got a competitive mindset. I got some friends that could play. Well, guess what? You can compete in stuff like this. Go to compete.playstation.com, sign up. Opportunities abound across a ton of different games. We would love to have you come over to Apex because we do still have some slots available. So just know signing up gives you the opportunity. And worst to worst, if you're probably not going to win your first couple of games, but you're at least going to make some friends and that have a similar competitive mindset. And that's going to lead to growth as an overall player. It's not always about winning the very first event. Sometimes it's just about dipping your toe in and starting to get that taste to learn more and more about what you do need to do to actually succeed in the competitive scene. But I think that we are going to take a quick break because I need it. This game's been hype. I got to go get some water, go to the restroom. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We will see you for the last game. It's going to be awesome. here we sit. One more game for Apex Legends Master Circuit Wildcards number 4 for Europe. Don't forget, we still have North America that's going to be coming up later, but, I mean, it's getting to be neck and neck, Lou. We got some fun that's going to be had here.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Can't wait to see what happens when we reset things in just a few hours and obviously get into our North American bracket as well. But Europe has been very fun to see. It's been a tumultuous storyline as well, especially for Viper Squadron, right? Having the Heartbreak storyline coming in with this 2 to start things out. Having those 2 kind of no-show games, unfortunately. It all came crashing down last game. But still, that potential to potentially come back and have a game like we saw in game number 3 where they absolutely shut it down, picked up nearly 15 kills over the course of that game as well. If we can have something like that out of them and our current top contender and we don't play ends up dropping off the map early. Haven't seen that happen yet, but it happens to everybody sooner or later. Should that happen to them here in game number 5, we could still potentially see them swing back into it, but it is a very healthy lead at the moment where we don't play with 72 total points compared to Viper Squadron's 49 in second and of course Baguette's 45 in third.
I'm about to say the most John Madden thing that I've ever said, and we don't playing a survival game. The name of the game is just about to be survival, right? They don't even need to go for kills. They just need to hide. They just need to out-survive Viper Squadron, Baguette, let the pressure of the overall point totals be what's going to force their hand. That's kind of the benefit. When you get into this, I often talk about how important it is to make everybody react to what you're doing. We don't play doesn't even need to react in-game. The leaderboard is its own influence now, and it's going to be about, do we settle for second, do we settle for third, or do we go for that number 1 spot? Because there is a risk that you might be overtaken, because there's only 4 points that separate second and third. So if you go for that risky first place, you might find yourself in third place instead.
Yeah, for Viper Squadron as well as Baguette. Wouldn't be surprised at all if we see them try to get hyper-aggressive into this one, potentially try to get greedy with the landing zones to get that early 3-kill wipeout as well, just to boost the point total a little bit. They know that they have a lot of ground to make up for here, and if they're wanting to try and make the closure at all, they've got to pretty much put the pedal to the metal and never take their foot off the gas throughout the entirety of this game. Unfortunately, that carries a lot of risk with it. It has a very high potential for either one of those teams to burn out early on, pretty much killing their chances of that goal, and then potentially leaving a window of opportunity open for them to get past in second or third place if another team pops off as well. So they've got to consider that as well. They are somewhat in the money, so to speak, by holding those positions. They may be wanting to preserve that at this point, too, if they feel that the first place is a bit of an unwinnable condition at this point. But we'll have to see, of course, how those teams kind of interpret the situation when we get into it.
Don't forget, though, We Don't Play has had 3 different teams that have dropped around their location, so they have got to be cautious. There's a hot drop potential for brewing. Yes, they did win the hot drop that happened to them earlier whenever they took a game win. But if we end up with multiple teams that all want to get involved in that firefight early, because everybody's now going to be after points, this is desperation time for a couple of these teams that are down on the bottom of the leaderboard. Every kill is important to them, and that could spell some doom for We Don't Play. They've got to be cautious.
All right, well, going to be getting into it. We'll take one final peek at the Legends select, and more than likely going to be rocking with the same stuff we've had for our previous 4 or so drops. There hasn't been any departures from normality in this respect, so the first one will come up now, and yeah, pretty much the same things as before. We still are looking at that one team over on the left side working with an Octane, few other variables outside of that, but for the most part, all of our teams falling into a formula sooner rather than later here, with the only big change of being Baguette running that Crypto. I think even they're going to ditch that. They're going to go with an Ashe, actually, on Puree for this final drop. So even they've departed from that, where they were able to win a game with him earlier.
I'm kind of curious on how they're wanting to make modifications around off of this. Like, what is the overall goal that we're going to be looking at? But I feel like the map is going to dictate a lot of what we're going to be seeing on these drops, as the path is around fish farms and going to be ending around North Pad. So with a map like this, you can get wherever you want. I'm just curious, Shipfall Barometer. Where do we see We Don't Play? Do they go there? That's their home. Or are they just going to go for a fake out somewhere else entirely?
We'll find out in a moment here. Generally, they prefer a later drop as well, so it could be changing up their POI again, going for something a little bit different. They do kind of have the right of initiation, so to speak, if they want to go for the high loot zone, just because of the fact that, of course, they are the point leader in the overall kind of game winner at this point, but not necessarily going to be drifting towards that. Looks like they do head off towards Barometer. Not going to be the only team doing that, though, as we've also got the Hakims, as far as I can tell, heading in that direction, too, with also another 2-stack being positioned a bit closer towards Antenna, so we could see a few fireworks spark from that portion of the map in a few minutes as well.
Looks like Cave might actually be the eyes on where we're going to be going with We Don't Play. North, yet again, also going to be kind of feisty, as it looks like we've got a couple of teams that are going to be stopping up over there. Red Fade's got to find themselves very, very careful, as this is already going to be an early firefight for them. You can see repositioning off of it, but at least have themselves a blue shield. And in an early firefight like this, that could be pivotal.
from that. Red Fade ready to leap into the fray here, but still being a little bit cautious because of the lower HP that they're working with. Even Magnum's sake, of course, with the blue shield.
Early, man.
Yeah, still going to be sitting a little bit lower as they are able to get that damage in, get a few cracks off, but no full downs as far as I can tell just yet here. Red Fade a little bit tepid in this fight, not wanting to full commit to it due to the lower HP on their players, but at the same time definitely having the capability to do so. They've brought them down low quite a few times, but they have this hard point, unfortunately, working in the favor of their defense at the moment, so that's forcing back some of the aggression from Red Fade.
I like the way that they're playing this, not overstepping until it becomes too much of a problem for them. You can see that still dancing around the outside. At this stage, any form of attrition battle is beneficial for you. If you can make them burn shields, meds, there's not been time to loot. So anything that you can get is going to just be a slow build of more and more damage. Lines up, good sneaky peek off of that one. That is absolutely beautiful coming up from El Magnums. Now, going to be all about exploiting that assassin on the other side of it, and it's just going to be a follow-up to at least finish out the kill. And what are we going to see? No surrender yet. Looks like the other team's still trying to hold their ground, but it is not going their way.
Well, Magnum's messing up a little bit, accidentally bringing out the jetpack for a second longer than he wanted to. That third player also jumping into the fray, trying to surprise. Nearly gets the down on the two of them as well. But thankfully, shield swap will bring one of them back into the fray pretty quickly, and as well, a Phoenix kit should get Mogonticus back into the fray also. So Vertex winning out that early fight, or rather, that squad closing out. We'll go over to Vertex now to see what Matty Fancy and the rest of this squad are up to, trying to leap into the fray against another team entirely.
And it's going to be Baguette that I believe is going to be what's going to be going on over here. And yep, you can see trying to retreat from this. This is actually, no, I'm sorry. This is our Western fight that's going on because we have 3 hot drops that were occurring all at the same time. Baguette losing Taylor, though, early is going to be a problem for them as they're going to have to retreat. Looks like they, maybe, I say retreat. They might actually just be trying to hunt this one down. I don't know how much they're wanting to extend into it. On the opposite side, we're going to go back over into the wall. And this is our other hot drop with Vertex.
Vertex, of course, looking to hunt for pretty much as they can get out of this game. Not a whole lot to be conquested for, given their position in the tournament at the moment, but they're going to try and claim whatever they can in the final moments of play. You're going to see that scan land successfully onto Gyogi, and unfortunately with white shields, that may draw a little bit more of an ire from his opponents, so we'll see if they peek into that one. Either way, it doesn't look like Vertex MGA is too keen on potentially activating this fight themselves, just kind of maintaining the rotate position for when they are finally forced to move, or more than anything, if they can catch that squad on the other side moving out against their pattern here. They can potentially jump on them, get some good damage going, and use that to initiate, but not able to find a whole lot that's workable for them from the outside of this door, unfortunately.
I also want to give a heads up. Viper Squadron has moved down from North Pad and is trying to gatekeep out the Baguette firefight. Since they do land pretty close to Baguette, it looks like they keep straying down there, hearing that firefight. See if maybe they can third party into that one. We do have the ring that's coming in. I mean, it's real close, as now you can see it on the mini maps. This is going to have to be either choose to continue your firefight and deal with the tickle damage that's going to come out from this first ring, or you just got to go for reposition, as the entirety of the north circle is still open. So early rotators are going to be heavily rewarded.
It's looking like Viper Squadron is going to be forced over towards the east, away from the positioning that Baguette was playing from previously. Baguette will not be able to claim the full finishing off onto the squad they've been fighting previously. Does have them down with about 2. That squad did pick up a car, so they are going to be at full 3, which means they're going to be able to skirt directly past the Baguettes. No chance of finishing them off. Unfortunately, the Baguettes will be stuck behind in the circle. We'll have to make up quite a bit of ground as a result of that. And then for Viper Squadron, of course, now trying to stay ahead of the curve, they will have to run past a couple squads in the process. But looks like, again, the worry is not necessarily on cutting off Viper Squadron at this point, so they're going to remain safe as they try to get closer and closer towards the north end of this first circle.
What I've got my eyes drawn to is Tiberian over there with FMA. Depending on their pathing, they might move down. Looks like they're going to lean around and just kind of cut into that cave area just to the northwest of Antenna, which, while they're doing that, that might mean the fact that We Don't Play could see them and could choose to backstab. I was thinking that maybe FMA might lean more to the south and could cut off their path, but it looks like that's going to be inverted instead.
We do see Jazla being forced into another fight. Clippers, this is, of course, jumping into the next village. They're able to find out another squad. Haven't been able to get an ID as far as who they found just yet, but we'll I'll follow through on that in a second, as they also have more pressure coming in against them from the north side, as well as their east, too. So Clippers, good thing they established this position inside of the building, as they've got to defend it pretty much immediately against not just one squad, but two. And I don't even think they've realized the second one is potentially thrusting onto them just yet. The Valk going to try and make a move, more than likely just noticing that third squad there as Jazzilla looks over to the right side. Matty Fanzi, though, was able to sneak into the village during the process of that. That was the Valk that got lit up pretty heavily, but she did make it past the threshold here, and now has a pretty dangerous position against the Clippers here. So that's going to force them back over to the next building, giving up a little bit of their own positioning, and now fully scouting out that third party in the process. Jazzilla sees just how much the space in this village specifically may be compromised now.
This has just been a leapfrog all the way down from the wall. Different teams kind of moving into a new point to hold out. Clippers do have the gatekeeping point, but there are so many threats. And yes, Cascade has some defenses to it, but it can also be kind of risky for it. Hearing what's going to be happening, they know the fact that the threats are close. It's just going to be the ring that's going to continue to force them, as well as that's been the big contender right now. The ring being a problem for all of these teams is this is a lot of very sneaky movement to kind of readjust around Clippers as they wanted to hold this, and I think that Riot Squad and his team has managed to sneak by them.
So much gatekeeping going on as a result of this one. Indeed, they're going to be able to work their way past it. Matty Fanzi, as you can see, just working on the far extremities of this situation, just trying to barely stay alive on those outskirts, and more importantly, get past the situation if at all possible. Clippers still looking for a way to get themselves into the circle as well. And we're caught up, of course, with GB, who is trying to catch anyone that might be drifting too far into the open. At the same time, it looks like they want to maintain some anonymity, make sure that they don't potentially reveal themselves too aggressively, limit their own capability to get out from this position in just a few moments. They have just as much of a problem to rotate out of here as Clippers were having as of a few seconds prior. Clippers are finally just going to hit the screw it button and go for the launch, however, on the Valkyrie ultimate. Looks like it works out quite nicely. They find a good open path to get themselves clear of this very, very dangerous scenario, and better than that, of course, out of the circle now. Not going to have to worry about potentially having all that health bled away from them, and more important, the mats that would have been going with it.
Quick update on everybody. We do have the circle that has leaned into the south. Hard shift's going to continue, and that is going to be beneficial for guess who? We don't play. We still have a very weakened Baguette that is outside in the ring, and Viper Squadron also spent a lot of time outside the ring coming into this one. So I think trying to play the waiting game. You can see both of them in the northwest there, as it's going to be a continued push down. We just saw three different teams right around Cascade. They've managed to get some separation, but with the pathing down into Antenna, where we're going to be looking down into this area with Shipfall, there's going to be more choke points, and that means the fact that there's going to be another lineup and another leapfrog defense that's probably going to have to come up.
See, the Hakim's going to get at least one of their players scanned out. Toucan trying to respond to that now. No immediate threat on them because they have such a vertical high point. It looks like the squad that did scan them is being jumped on as well. So, we said there, the Hakims themselves not going to come under any immediate threat. Although it does look like We Don't Play is a part of this engagement in one way or another, sitting close by, potentially trying to jump onto the very same squad that the Hakims were trying to target out a second ago. There you go, the beams going onto them in more ways than one at the moment. But the Hakims just cannot land the shot in the way they need to, so that squad is going to be forced to reposition, but won't be under immediate threat of loss of life just yet. That will come in the future here, however, as they once again still have not found a safe harbor to fall back into.
These shots coming out from Hakim, though, have allowed a reposition coming out from FMA, where they're pretty close to the circle. Looks like we're catching some air time, as it's going to be a readjustment coming out from FMA. Going to try to bypass this, and they could be rewarded with that, as, yep, they're going to find themselves the choke point just past this position. So now, pretty much coming up and saying, hey, Hakims, We Don't Play is your problem. Bye.
This is going to be able to make it out of there. Away from that pretty dodgy scenario up against the Hakim roster. We Don't Play in the meanwhile has found a nice little beachhead for them to position onto. This is going to be kind of hanging out on the edge of the circle while they wait for another squad to potentially venture towards them. Mind you, again, We Don't Play doesn't really need to be too aggressive inside of this scenario. That's why you haven't really seen a whole lot of damage come from them. They've been avoiding fights for the most part at all costs here. Just only now seeing the first bit of damage come out for the game overall onto that flyer a moment ago.
We've got a big thing that's brewing over here. We have 4 teams that are about to converge in the north. As it looks like they're being gate kept out. Andre 3 and his squad have managed to hold out Riot Zone. But don't forget the fact that we have also Baguette as well as Viper, all just now getting barely ahead of the ring and are going to be closing in this area. And that's going to be a massive firefight.
See, Volt just barely making it out of there for GB. Is going to be able to thankfully get the shield sell off. Don't believe he had a battery for himself either, which is really going to limit his potential to try and keep himself actively in the engagement. Corellum now being lost as well. GB very split up inside of this engagement here, and even more dangerous for Volt. He'll move inside of his ultimate now, but gets himself surrounded by the circle in the process, and it's starting to hurt as well. Moving deeper and deeper into the round itself. It is going to limit the time he has to play. Out here will be taken down by Andre. Will knock him out and pretty much limit the potential for GB as a team overall. Now the only one left is going to be Riot Zone here, trying to play it out. He still needs to try and venture forward to get into the circle though, and he's quickly running out of time to do that. The good news is, did manage to scavenge Cruellum, so has gotten him back in. Not the end of the day just yet for this team, but Riot Zone finally going to be isolated, found out, and Cruellum to fall afterwards. GB now down, and we're into the top 10 as a result of that.
And while this is going on, we did see Viper Squadron jump over them and move more antenna-sided. While they were doing that, though, somebody did spot it out, and I believe it was the Clippers that have now moved to engage them with another hard shift to the south. Means the fact that all this action that we're seeing is lining up and going to have to continue as Viper Squadron sees the targets in front of them and finally content to be outside the ring are going to have to move yet again with the ring at their backs.
Viper Squadron, keep in mind, need a lot of points to get themselves back into first place here. Maintaining a top 3 position is just a matter of surviving for the most part and picking up a reasonable number of kills, which they're on track to do that. But in terms of actually trying to catch their opponents in first place, not making the most progress towards that at the moment, as they've been limited in their aggressive potential just due to how tense these fights have been and how many parties want to jump into the fray. So they need to be increasing that by quite a bit here over the rest of the teams if they want to have a chance to still take first place. Otherwise, we don't play very much in pole position to maintain that at the end of this game. TXC, of course, trying to finish things off in the midst of this fight. Shigam feels the opportunity to leap onto his opponent, or at minimum, feels an opportunity to go in and get his teammate's banner. We'll be able to successfully do that. In terms of extending this fight, though, neither team really seems keen on doing that. So the Valkolt's going to be deployed here, and they will evacuate. Oh, never mind. They'll cancel it, actually. They're going to fall back instead. They've got the circle close by and potentially a respawn beacon with it, so we'll have to see if they can get their teammate back now.
But this has been the convergence point. We have Viper Squad that's managed to move into here, so they have got to be careful. DXC, I don't think realizes how many threats are around. Taylor just on the opposite side of this as well. With the way that the circle is now lined up, Viper Squadron has a defended position and a gatekeeping position on all the action that's going to be happening with Taylor now making the jump in. Somehow these two teams that have just been nomming on ring damage manage to find their way to sneak in and get themselves a strong point in one of these in-game circles. With this, Hakeem, FMA, all rotated down into the south of this, and that's led to an entirely new choke point that's been brewing, and that's where We Don't Play is trying to converge into. With this high ground advantage, we're going to see 3 different choke points all popping off, and it's going to lead to the death of plenty of these teams in the hunt for first.
You can see Viper Squadron trying to close in on one of those teams right now, not able to capitalize on it as well as they would have liked, though. Hakeem, in the meanwhile, does down out one member of another squad deeper and elsewhere on the map. Aside from that, though, whole kill feed goes quiet for a second. Neither of these teams able to capitalize on their positioning. Viper Squadron, you can tell, though, the way they're proceeding around, moving around this hillside at the moment. They want the fight. They want these kills, but they just have not been able to find them as of yet. There goes the FMA Titans as we do see another squad being finished back off. Another one ending up knocked out. This time it looks like by the players on We Don't Play. That's Red Fade down for the count as well here. So for Viper Squadron, they are quickly running out of time, and even worse, their direct rival is going to be picking up more and more points here to potentially open up the divide.
And the team that they were trying to hold out even jumps over them as well. Now, back to the south. You can see this is where all of the fun's been brewing. Hakeems have themselves We Don't Play right on top of them. We Don't Play coming into the tail end of this has 4 teams around them at the time, and they have got to be very, very cautious on this. New circle is about to pop, does pop, goes over into the east. Only one team really in that, and I believe that's going to be the Clippers. It's all going to be about the firefight along Shipfall, and now getting vision, We Don't Play opens up and now reveals the fact that the firefight is going to brew, and I think that Hakeem can come up back behind it.
We Don't Play has been forced back here, losing a lot of shield pressure on the inside of this one. One player able to go for a hard swap on their shield to be able to reignite it, but that's it. They're out. That was the only extra one they had, and now their players are going to start dropping as a result of that. Trying to trade this back around. They haven't been able to down one of their opponents as of yet here. They're holding it back. They have the high ground. They have the capability to jump up on top of We Don't Play. 2 now down for We Don't Play. Romexo plays the only one still in the engagement. They're being forced back further and further. Carnova now out of the fight, having to go for a full battery back to full HP. Romexo also being forced to go for Phoenix kit as well to bring himself back up to 100 here. It'll work out. They'll be allowed the room to do that, but still down in the 2v3 to the loss of Namka from a few seconds prior. Their opponents were distracted by the fight going on behind them, and now we're going to see We Don't Play try to turn the tables back against them, getting close to downing out one of their opponents, but they also have other focuses now too, as that team is trying to fend off a push from the other side.
Yeah, it's going to be the teams that were back behind this. Just to the northeast of that is going to be Viper Squadron caught up in a fight as well. Biohazard, you can see going down inside of that fight. All of these fights going to have vision as you step over the side of Shipfall. Now, We Don't Play realizing it's going to be a time to make their play. They have got to figure out some way to get around this Carnova, Rom. Are they going to go aggressive into the firefight, or are they going to try to find a way to jump over it and go to the east? It looks like the fire line is going to be continuing lining up as every single team is leaning into this western line, trying to block out We Don't Play, and they're pathing into the circle.
We Don't Play just itching at the opportunity to move forward here and lock in these kills that should, for the most part, secure first place finish for the team in the game. Already making it to the top 7 is going to be a good order to try to push them even closer to that end goal here. Vertex, as you can see, struggling a little bit. They lost Kyogi in the previous fight, and they've got plenty of players surrounding them. Meanwhile, you've got the Viper Squadron remaining aggressive. They've only been able to capitalize on another second kill for themselves, though they need to be way more aggressive than this if they want to come back into the game. Trying to get as much as they can. They'll move in. Looks like it, the wipe off onto this next squad, but is still going to leave them struggling to find another opponent, and they will thankfully find one. The third and final member of this team trying to run away from it. And we'll see Twiggy, unfortunately not able to fully capitalize on that player. They'll escape past the hillside, but they're also going to pop out again. Another opportunity to be fully claimed, but Viper Squadron having to watch their own lives here as well, as we are down now into the final few moments of play.
We have 7 squads alive, so even if we see somebody go down at this stage, they're not going to net very many points out of it. Still, Clippers holding down control. You can see they've got vision on all the rotating points that are going to be going on around them. Sarah, Sutcliffe, still alive, moving very close over to where we can see that it's going to be Baguette playing from. But everything is still leaning into Shipfall. So much attention being drawn that way as Hakeems are still trying to stay alive. Maddie is still trying to stay alive over there, and it's going to be Viper Squadron to the north with free movement. However they want to go into this. They can lean into Shipfall, or they can move away from it, as it's still We Don't Play trying to just leapfrog their way over, get away from it, but I don't know if they've got the cleanest of sight lines. It's going to be Clippers that should be able to see this at any given moment, and they've got the lineup. Viper Squadron coming on the other side of this is going to come in for the compress, gets vision down in, quick spray is going to be coming out from it, quick pickup on one, TXC is eliminated, but it's still going to be Baguette over here. Viper Squadron still competing for that position up against Baguette. They know that this is a vital firefight, and they've got to line into it. Taylor is going to get the down onto Biohazard, and that means it's going to be time to go. They know exactly who's holding this position, steps around, gets the spray, but it's going very, very precarious for them, tries to line up into the shots, and there you go, Baguette is going to go down.
I get down and out, but Viper Squadron also losing a player. The good news is it looks like they maintain positioning, but no, we've got more pressure coming onto it. Carnova trying to hold on for We Don't Play down in the depths here as well. They haven't been able to notice him just yet as Viper Squadron lost that third player literally a second after they got them back up. Black Hole coming out now as well to suck them in. Viper Squadron quickly dealing with that and able to move themselves away from it. They will be able to stay in the fight, ready for the next engagement here. Twiggy definitely going to be the linchpin for trying to close this one down, as Dominus just way too low out of that situation. He gets lost. One of their opponents gets revived back up. They're just going to be playing for positioning now. You can see Twiggy does not want to reignite the fight, just going to be crawling his way back into the circle here. He's thinking about potentially taking that next engagement for a second, but thinks for too long, takes a tick of damage from the inside of the circle. Meanwhile, over on the southwest end of this now, we go back over to the Hakeems, who are trying to go for one of the best placements we've seen out of the tournament so far from them. Their position just on the other side of this box, trying to stay alive and inside of the fight. We have so many different squads bearing down on them that they might just not be able to do it, as they were the first here. Clippers now jumps into the fight. We can see Makim on the back end of this one, trying to surprise, but is caught out by Cheka instead. A lot of pressure coming as another black hole is thrown at it, sends the Clippers into a corner, but Hakeem wrapping around the outside of it, thinks he has enough health to engage upon this, unfortunately regrets that pretty heavily. Viper Squadron will now go down as well. The Hakeems to follow it shortly after that. We're into our top 3, and it seems like the Clippers may have the edge on this one, as it's a 2 squad and a single member squad there to round out the other 2 squads in the top 3. This, we can see Matt Fanzi continuing to push himself forward. Out past the corner, has the bat being deployed as well, trying to keep himself into the fight. We can see Carvona trying to sneak in more kills for We Don't Play as they try to go for more and more to buffer what already should be a first place finish, considering who is remaining inside of this top 3 and just how many kills they've been able to get for themselves. Vertex, MGA, an excellent game for them as they picked up at least 6, if not more than that, over the course of play here. Carvona just trying to leap into it, get what he can out of the 1v2, and might actually be able to win the 1v2, all things considered. But never mind, there goes We Don't Play. They'll be fully knocked out. Clippers just waiting for that fight to finish off so they can have the clean closeout, as indeed they're going to be able to close down our final game of the day with quite a few KPs coming in behind it to support their claim. Won't be enough to try and push themselves into a top 1 positioning. That is more than likely still going to fall convincingly over to We Don't Play, but an excellent effort coming in here to close out on our final game of the day.
And so, no surprise off of this, it's going to be a great day for We Don't Play, managing to out-survive those that were trying to compete up against them. But second place, I feel, might be dicey for everybody. Looking through, though, I have got to give respect where respect is due. Whenever we look at this, Cheka and the rest of the team did a good job on reading all of the damage around them, making sure to reposition, step back away whenever they had 3 teams that were encroaching onto, yes, a very defendable position, but realizing the numbers advantage there would have spelled their doom. Instead, surrender that, let a new team firefight in that area, and then they can exploit that fight afterwards. That is a magnificent read to pick up the victory.
It's a nice, safe way to play what was otherwise, to be fair, a very chaotic game. So many teams struggling to get the huge spree of KPs, which we've been seeing our squads find in previous matchups. Now almost impossible to achieve even for the top of our teams, or the top teams on our leaderboard here. Couldn't really find more than really 2 to 3 KPs over the course of this one, making that goal of trying to eclipse We Don't Play's scoreline so difficult for teams like Viper Squadron, as you can see here, who was trying their best, trying to play it as aggressively as possible, ultimately led to a little bit of an earlier elimination because of that. Even against this squad that they were trying to take down as well. Baguette, of course, ending up slightly behind them, who could not manage to beat out We Don't Play, who had that rat able to make it into the top 3 and still end up placing a little bit higher than them just on the overall finishing placement score there. Fell behind a little bit on the kills, but like we said, with about a 20-point lead, I doubt they're too worried here.
And I shouldn't be surprised as we're going to be moving into this. The way that everybody was playing the terrain and navigating it, specifically the teams that managed to juke around into the east and wrap through, it was just so vicious. But Clippers continued to read how the movements were coming in. You can tell this is all about map knowledge. They know exactly where the weak points and the vulnerabilities in their defense are, and they did such a great job on holding it. Not going to walk away with the highest kill counts because, let's be honest, Ship was where all the firefighting was going on, but they still managed to get a lot of damage out and walk away with the victory.
Yeah, Cheka specifically capitalizing on some of those long-range weapons, at least having a bit more of a healthy damage spree there at 1584, but the rest of the team more so kind of, more than anything, just kind of waiting for the right opportunity to strike. That's how this team was able to win things out, at least end up on the top of our placements. Speaking of which, I believe we'll have the final leaderboards to start to finish things off here, as well as our final leader count as well. See who won each game one final time, and take a look at that for you guys. Here we go. We'll get that up on the screen. It'll be Baguette who took our first game of the day. We Don't Play, though, claim the majority of our games as they took games 2 and 4. Had a pretty respectable finish in the top 3 for game 5 as well. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, We Don't Play with a resounding 81 points as their total. Still about 20 points ahead of the next highest squad, but it is going to be Viper Squadron in second. And so unfortunate for Baguette as they actually got bumped out of the top 3 by Clippers, finishing first in that final game.
I mean, just very, very well played coming out from We Don't Play, managing to string together some phenomenal performances. It's pressure whenever we've only got 5 games to look at. And so therefore you have got to make sure that you do not relent ever. And they did such a great job on that. But let's not forget, we're not done. There's tons of PlayStation action. There's even more Apex action that's going to be rolling our way through today. So as we're going to be working our way through it, don't forget the fact that we still got Mortal Kombat down the line, Rainbow Six Siege, Apex Master Circuit Season 2 Finals, which you know you want to tune into because that's what all of this has been leading up for, Dragon Ball Fighters, as well as Street Fighter on the fighting side of that one. But we still even have more action that's going to be going on today in Apex. This was just EU. We've got North America that we're going to be following this up on, and I believe that's going to be happening at 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So I'm looking to take, I think it's like 2.5 hours, somewhere around there. Yeah. So we'll see you guys in just a second. But if you see all of this action and you're like, man, I want to get involved, there are tons of ways you can do it. Remember, you can go to compete.playstation.com. Tons of opportunities, all the games that we just listed, tons of chances for you to compete, and we want you to, because there are so many possibilities. Make sure you get involved in the community, because that alone makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely. Go ahead over and check it out. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the European show. As Major was mentioning, make sure you are sticking around, as in about 2.5 hours time, we will be back with the same thing, but North American styles. We'll see you guys in just a few hours for more Apex Legends here from the PlayStation stream of PlayStation Tournaments.
PlayStation